Chapter 2044. On the second floor of Sargeraz's tomb, Jaden chose the largest underground square and let several leaders swarm over. Gross, a once incomparably powerful lord of the abyss. As punishment for his past failures, Gross's entire body was covered in burns. The current Gross was like the hellfire of the army, his entire body seemed to be made of burning green stones. Apart from the four-legged dragon-shaped lower body and the fat upper limbs unique to the Lord of the Abyss, it was basically impossible to tell that he once had a noble identity. Every movement of the beast caused his flesh to crack and crackle, and at the same time, it was accompanied by endless pain. As a powerful combat creature, he was appointed by Jaden as the first boss of Sargeraz's tomb. He was happy to inflict this pain on all those who challenged him. Whether it was as the Lord of the Abyss or the current molten monster, he was always at the front. For the army, he roared and rushed towards the wall of flesh and blood formed by the huge guardians. Just as he was about to rush in front of the Alliance powerhouses, this molten monster fiercely smashed the ground with its two thick front legs. The earth was surging, and green lava that could be seen with the naked eye passed under the solid floor, arching up an entire row of floor tiles with a crackling sound. When the molten was about to rise into three black lava pillars that would take 10 people to wrap their arms around, the ice guardian Hodier shouted, "I'll do it." The huge frost axe fiercely struck the ground, and a wave of frost elements that were even more powerful than Gross was injected into the ground. At the same angle, it met the lava flow head-on. The lava flow, which had yet to fully unleash its violent destructive power, directly cooled down. Even the lava pillars were instantly brittle and shattered on the spot. Not only that, but the huge wave of frost that was pressed back even rushed out of the ground and completely froze one of Gross's legs. "Demon, let me, Hodier, have some fun with you." The 10-story-tall guardian stood in front of the 5-story-tall Gross. It's a little like the big bullying the small. On the other side, the Fiend Tribunal group launched a surprise attack. They were aiming at Freya, who was standing a little outside. Jaden had long expected that the mortal army would invade the tomb of Sargeraz, so he summoned his best hunters, Adigon and Balak, to surround the invaders and prevent them from using the Pillar of Creation to go deeper into the underground city. Unfortunately, if they were used against mortal experts, they would be quite powerful. But his opponent was Freya, so it was not enough. The moment Hodier counterattacked Groth, the demon duo's giant scythe sliced through the nature guardian's neck, and a gust of demonic wind blasted Freya's body. It seemed that Freya was in a miserable state. If she was a mortal expert, she might have been defeated by this combined attack. At the same time, Freya nonchalantly stabbed the defenseless Adigon in the chest with a karate chop. Under the shocked gazes of all the demons. A vast expanse of green. The green light representing nature exploded on the demon lord's chest, and a large amount of smelly flesh and blood slowly fell from the air. They were too anxious. If they first got rid of the bunch of ancient trees, thorny flowers, and human-shaped plants behind Freya's health recovery ability would be greatly reduced. Directly attack. Sorry, Freya was invincible in this state. The third and fourth bosses of the tomb of Sargeraz were the Naga thug Hayatan and the Moon Sisters respectively. As a Naga, nothing could stop the charm of Vashj, who was already a demigod. Vashj had long become a martial artist, and she was a mess. Except for the former High Elf Queen Azhara who was in hiding, no Naga expert could stand in front of Vashj and speak. So Hayatan had already surrendered long ago, and was now in the coalition army. As for the Moon Sisters, the first thing to explain was that the tomb of Sargeraz was originally the moon goddess temple. As they went deeper into the tomb, the scene everywhere showed its elven style. The quaint walls were covered in cobwebs, and the color was completely different from the black and green of the entrance hall. However, over the long years, the dark power that Egwene had sealed under the tomb had gradually affected this place. Before Sargeraz's incarnation was buried under the moon goddess temple, the Moon Sisters had long become the temple's guards. Even after death, they were still loyal to their duty. But in these thousands of years, something had distorted their ability to distinguish between friend and foe. Madness slowly engulfed them. Now, Anyone who entered this temple would be executed by them. Unfortunately, only Duque was so extravagant, and had long gotten a token from Elun. Well, when the current high priest, Chandris, lifted her robe and appeared with the divine object that Elun had bestowed upon her, the Moon Sisters immediately became loyal subjects. This scene made him so angry that he stomped his feet. Unfortunately, whether it was the leader of the Burning Legion or the guardians of the coalition army, they were all bloody bulls. Compared to the guardians that were 10 stories tall, most of the space in the tomb of Sargeras was narrow. This meant that there wasn't much space for the guardians to gang up on. A few mortal powerhouses were left behind to help, and the main force continued to descend. The fifth was Saslan. As Matriarch Shivala, who was the least likely to jump to the side of the loyal subjects, a tough battle was inevitable. According to what Daddy Blizzard had said, Matriarch Saslan's introduction was that she devoted her life to using her dark will to bind marine creatures. Relying on this power, she summoned terrifying nightmares from the depths of the sea that could drown all enemies who dared to challenge her. Sounds awesome, doesn't it? To put it bluntly, it could be described in one sentence: the other party didn't want to talk to you, so she threw a murloc at you. Elite murlocs with HP comparable to mini-bosses would stick to someone like sticky candy and harass them in all kinds of ways once they jumped on them. Under normal circumstances, Saslan had to rely on her own skills to solve the problem. In addition, there were annoying giant squids, fat fish, jellyfish, and a bunch of other marine creatures. But this time, Saslan's opponent was Torim, the Thunder Guardian. Towards these inconspicuous little guys, Torim's entire body was filled with lightning. No matter what they were, he wouldn't even think about it. He would raise his hand and strike their whole family, turning all the seafood into a family bucket of lightning. As expected of a grandpa. He directly activated the thunderstorm, shrouding the entire shallow and deep waters in a thunderstorm composed of thousands of lightning snakes. After a few rounds, Matriarch Saslan screamed and was hit by Torim's thunder sledgehammer. Black smoke rose from her body, and she lay dead on the spot. Chapter 2045. There were only 2 leader monsters left in Sargeras' tomb, the Guard Maid, and the Amalgamation. The Guard Maid was ordered by Aegwin to guard the tomb of Sargeras. She had been guarding it for hundreds of years. But the Guardian did not expect the evil power leaking out of the Avatar to affect the Titan structure. It was slowly distorted by this evil power. Sargeras' tomb was once the sacred graveyard of the Night Elves, but the Burning Legion had distorted it with the Soul Engine. This evil machine extracted the energy of the dead and twisted them into monsters. If these 2 bosses were to deal with mortal powerhouses, they might be able to make do, but against the ferocious main force of the Guardians, they were completely insufficient. Not to mention, there was a group of Alliance heroes who were not demigods, but stronger than demigods. Even if they deliberately used magic cloaks to hide their aura and energy waves, Jaden could be sure that these guys with divine artifacts, even if they had not officially stepped into the divine realm, could exert combat power no weaker than a low-level demigod. Talaga Gonmota. At the bottom of the tomb of Sargeras, Jaden cursed. Anyway, when translated in Eridar, it was nothing more than F***ck, F***ck, F***ck. The wrong assessment of strength put Jaden in a passive position. The first few boss monsters were basically beaten up by the Guardians of Azeroth. Jaden had no choice but to activate the large ambush that he had originally planned to wait for Duque to appear. Anger burned in his heart, and he was angry that he had to play his trump card in advance. He knew that as a demigod of the Weave, Duque's spatial magic was quite outstanding. If not, he would not have asked this guy to be in charge of the Burning Legion's portal to Azeroth back then. He had wanted to wait for Duque to enter deeper into the tomb of Sargeras, such as when he was fighting hard, and then ambush him. But his little brother was not good enough. If he let the Guardians go deeper, it would seriously hinder Lord Sargeras' resurrection plan. Jaden waved his claws and ordered, "No more waiting. Attack, hold them off for me. I'm going to use the 3rd plan." For Jaden, who was used to tricking people, it was a shame to have to use the 3rd plan. Back then, he had swindled Zul to the point where his entire clan was almost wiped out. Even his body had been smashed to pieces, and he still had to continue working for the army for free. But now, both plans had failed. The first was to trick Duque, which was the most ideal. The second was to take out Illidan from the main Azeroth timeline and use his body, which had been injected with Sardra's energy and backup, as a resurrection material. Unfortunately, neither of them would work. The third option was a little weak. Kill. Jaden raised his hand and a space-time door from another timeline opened. The two powerful Void Lords personally carried out another corpse of Illidan. Damn it! This was not the main timeline. This guy was too weak. If the Great Lord Sardras wanted to use this to resurrect, he would have to expend a lot of energy. Kill. Jaden cursed. The flames that lingered around his huge body made the experts in the army feel that the heat was unbearable, and there was a terrifying sense of suffocation. None of the Void Lords dared to approach him. Not to mention ordinary low-level demons, if they came into contact with that little spark, it would quickly spread to their entire body, burning them alive along with their soul. Let's begin. No one dared to provoke Kill. Jaden. A group of Eridar warlocks quickly began the ceremony. At the same time, in the tomb of Sardras, the allied forces were still advancing steadily. As the Guardians killed the demons or distorted beings who worked for the Burning Legion, a large number of Vagli and Titan creations poured in. With their burly bodies, they filled the entire upper half of the tomb of Sardras. There was a sentry every 3 steps. Not only that, there were also 2 Naru members directly entered here under the cover of the Draenei and Titan creations. Under the guidance of the priests of the Elun Sisterhood, they cooperated with the power of Elun and used holy light to purify the evil energy in the tomb. At the forefront of the tomb, the demigod duo of the Kiraj twin emperors and a group of newly promoted bug leaders were opening the way. Most of the demons along the way were destroyed by the bugs. After the sizable elite bugs fought off the demon troops, there were follow-up bug workers to clean up the corpses. By the time the main force arrived, there would be only dirty demon blood left on the road, and there wouldn't be many broken limbs left. Basically, the corpses would be stuffed into various branches or small caves. Come on. It's none of our business. It's as easy as going on an outing. Gavin Rad carried the new wind sword made from the remnant soul of orc trash and swaggered along the flank of the team. Carelessness will cost you your life. Theon said in a deep voice. The enemy can attack from any angle, such as the ceiling or the floor. Wiping out this place will be an arduous battle. We'll be tense from start to finish, and we'll quickly tire out, Sidan Dathrahan teased. Don't you and Turalian have our full attention now? That's enough. Turayan was a little annoyed. It had been decades. How could the old brothers of the 4 Silver Sages not know the roots of their own people? Looking around, this lineup was simply magnificent to the point of explosion. On the left was the demigod bear monster Yusak and the User brothers, on the right was the wolf god Goldring and the thunder guardian Torim, who had already dealt with his opponent, on the rear was the tortoise god Tortola, and in the sky was the raven god Avienna. In the middle, apart from the Alliance heroes, there was also the guardian chief Odin. His huge body was like a small mountain. Of course, there would be no chance for him to attack. Occasionally, a demon would break through the vanguard of the swarm, but it would be easily taken care of by the circular formation of over 1,000 Vagli. These pitiful souls that had been transformed by souls were undoubtedly powerful in battle. It was just that looking at their holy wings that emitted white light felt a little ironic. Suddenly, the magic transmission of the troops at the front was severely disrupted. Enemy, attack. Vek Lor's voice sounded very anxious. Enemy attack. Everyone here is an enemy. Odin was indifferent. Odin was arrogant, and he had the right to be arrogant. The other Alliance heroes would not take this message so lightly. Ever since the demon emperor Vek Lor had pledged his allegiance to Duke, he had been cautious and conscientious. Even if he was killed once, he and his brother were still very reliable after being resurrected. As an old subsidiary race of the Alliance leaders were very clear about the battle prowess of the Kiraji insect people. Something that could make Vec Lord jump had to be quite troublesome, or an enemy that was beyond the Twin Emperor's ability to deal with. Level 1 Combat Readiness. William had just shouted when 7 or 8 huge black shadows had already whizzed over, almost in a row. They charged out of the darkness and broke through Vagli's line of defense in an instant. Chapter 2046. Kazakh. Someone in the Alliance immediately recognized the huge demon that was charging at the front. It's him. It's not him either. His soul is very mottled, and it's almost not his original body. He's probably become another existence after some kind of enhancement, Thrall shouted. The former chief of the tribe, and now a shaman master belonging to the Alliance, Thrall's attainments in the field of souls could be said to be at the peak. His words were authoritative in this regard. Everyone immediately understood. Kazakh was already an old enemy of the Azeroth people. According to the original history, he would appear at the time of the King of Draenor, as Overlord Kazakh. In this life, from the inexplicable appearance of Karazhanli to the Battle of Mount Hyjal, Kazakh had appeared twice in total. Of course, Duque would not forget Kazakh. After all, without the entire time of the King of Draenor, the enemy that appeared inside was likely to be delayed until now. Duque guessed correctly. Everyone immediately matched this guy with the information that they had received in advance. According to the plan, attack. Magni Bronzebeard's body suddenly swelled up like a gust of wind, and in 3 seconds, he turned from a tiny crystal man into a Terminator-level giant that was 10 stories tall. He waved the Balrog hammer, which also grew in size, fearlessly facing off against the boss of the Apocalypse Guards. It wasn't just him. A tall and thin figure in the crowd suddenly tore off his robe, revealing a handsome face and a head of brilliant blonde hair. Kael, that's Eversong, the former elf prince, now fought as the demigod of the fire element of the Azeroth. Suddenly, his body burst into flames, and he and his phoenix, Ao, merged into one. The image of the flaming phoenix behind him opened up with a whoosh, and let out a clear cry. He and Magni combined the power of 2 demigods and launched a frenzied attack against Overlord Kazakh. However, their combination would soon be forced to separate. More Burning Legion Void Dukes arrived. King Galaxus, Prince Malchezer, Eternal Secressa, Tyrant Vihari, and Queen Calitris of the Eridar race. The Dreadlords faction consisted of Kasranatar, Sesovar the Corruptor, Modophalos, and Maleficus. Shivara, Mother Harith, Ma Vorons. The representatives of the Dread Guardians were Aomer the Scarless and Ambassador Helmer. The Darksider Lord, General Sarkar, Bitug. Many of these evil sect leaders had been beaten up by the Alliance and even killed. However, after their souls returned to the Twisting Nether, they were resurrected and appeared before the Azeroth Coalition army in a brand new state. Perhaps some of them had already lost most of their souls when they were killed. So what? The Burning Legion was famous for their inhumanity. What Jaden needed was their combat power, so he mixed them with the souls of many low-level Void Dukes. His mottled soul caused his spellcasting ability to be greatly reduced. It didn't matter as long as they could still use their powerful bodies to fight. The Tomb of Sargeras, which wasn't spacious to begin with, became extremely chaotic after so many big guys squeezed in. It was almost impossible for mortals to find what could be called a safe foothold. A second ago, that place might have just been trampled by Odin's big foot. The next second, it might be the great demon's goat hooves trampling over it. That kind of chaotic battle was like a pot of porridge. Fortunately, the heroes of the Alliance had long since adapted to this kind of chaotic battle. Even if they were scattered for a while, they could use various class skills to find a way to gather together with their companions. Originally, if it was just these Void Dukes, the other Titan creations and Vargras could come to help. Unfortunately, they also had their own enemies that they had to deal with. Countless elite demons flew under the not-so-high dome of Sargeras' tomb. 1 row, 2 rows, 3 rows. These demons formed a formation and penetrated the darkness, trying to break through the Vargras formation and occupy the top of the Alliance army. The Vargris, who could fly, were not to be outdone. They almost immediately launched tactical maneuvers in midair. While dodging the rain of shadow arrows and fireballs, they attacked the demons with white and gold light beams of holy power. Even though they tried their best to intercept them, many flying demons still swooped down and attacked the Alliance heroes below. There were too many demons. Archers like Hadron Brightwing and Chandri's Feathermoon couldn't shoot all of them. For a moment, Chandri's wanted to use a big move. Unfortunately, using the debris of the stars against these elite demons was a little too wasteful. In this underground tomb that was shrouded by Sardra's evil power, Elun's power was greatly weakened, and she could barely borrow it. It could be said that the power of the moon goddess decreased with each use. Chandri's gritted her teeth and continued shooting. Malfurion raised his oak staff. He raised his head and waved his hand. A spherical wall made of vines immediately appeared above the heads of the mortal heroes. Then, he pushed forward again, and the wall of vines immediately extended forward. The swooping demons had no time to dodge, and they directly crashed into the wall. There was no continuous sound of hard objects colliding. Instead, it was like a spider web catching flying insects. Ugly figures wrapped in evil power were stopped, and thin vines pierced into the bodies of these demons. Soon, after a few convulsions, these demons kicked the bucket. Even with Malfurion's vine shield and Alonso's Fail's wide area holy light shield, everyone still felt like there was a rain of demons above their heads. Countless demon limbs and flesh fell with a pitter-patter, and the ground was covered with a layer of stinky stuff. It seemed like the Alliance army was on the verge of collapse, but with the Logia powerhouses supporting them, they could wear them down. Especially after the Guardian of Life, Freya, returned, they were as firm as a rock. No matter how the demon army attacked, the Alliance army didn't move. There were so many demon corpses that they blocked their own path forward. This caused the Burning Legion to start a frenzy of fire. It wasn't just in the tomb. Around the tomb of Sargeras, more than 100 large and small portals with a diameter of 2 to 30 meters opened in one go. From the smallest imps and hellhounds to the larger hellfires and fell reavers, they all rushed out to counterattack the Alliance army's position. Fierce battles broke out both inside and outside the tomb. However, Jaden was still unhappy. He suddenly realized that something was wrong. Many female heroes were missing from the Alliance army. To be precise, none of the women around Duque were around. Chapter 2047. This was definitely not normal. If it was an ordinary woman, she would leave her at home, in a safe place, and even hire the best guards in the city to protect her family. That was the right way to go. Just like Varian. Although he fought fiercely, he would never bring his queen to the front lines. Duque was different. The women Duque could count were all from the Alliance's hero squad. Even Kalia, who was known to be weak in combat, was an archbishop. Elucia also had the identity of a radiant moon mage. Queen Sylvie was a demigod, and Jaina was stuck at breaking dawn. She was actually waiting for Duque to advance before following him. Even Duque's rumored ambiguous relationships, Vashj, Isra, and Onyxia, were all demigods. And then there were the professions, main tanks like hoofed paladins and black dragon warriors, damage dealers like mages and rangers, and healers like priests and priests. Duque's harem was enough to start a hero squad. The world's best fighting family, was how the entire alliance described Duque's family. Duque's family had also become the core of the alliance's hero squad. But now, none of Duque's women could be seen. Duque's plan had obviously worked. He had concealed it very well. At first, the Alliance's formation was full of guardians and god of the wilderness. In addition to the densely packed Wagri and zombified Zergs, as well as the guys in charge of covering for them, they were all in godly equipment. Just by looking and sensing from afar, it was impossible to know how many Alliance heroes there were in the Alliance. The Burning Legion could only use this kind of all-out attack, relying on the high-tier Void Lords who could fight to break through the Alliance's formation, and drag the situation into a chaotic battle. Only then could they see the full strength of the Alliance. The alliance was definitely not weak, but Duque, whom Jaden valued the most, and Duque's women, were all absent. This made Jaden feel that something bad was about to happen. What could be more important than stopping Sargeras from reviving on planet Azeroth? Jaden couldn't think of anything at first. Normally speaking, it was impossible for any existence or force to be a match for the Burning Legion. Even the Pantheon couldn't do it, let alone in this battle. The Pantheon had only sent out a group of Guardians and Titan creations. In the past few years, the number of Guardians that the army had destroyed was at least in the 5 digits, and the number of Titan creations was in the hundreds of millions. Then why didn't Duque come? Suddenly, Jaden thought of a frightening possibility. This thought was like a poisonous weed, like a crazily growing vine, growing wildly in his vicious and fiery heart. Jaden couldn't hold it in any longer. He gave up on supervising Wizard Eridar's resurrection ceremony and charged forward on his own. He rushed out from the deepest part of Sargeras' tomb and joined the battle. Be careful. It's Jaden himself. The appearance of the egg was easy to recognize. There weren't many red-skinned demons as large as him to begin with, and with the ultra-high temperature surrounding his body, even gods and demons feared him. Regardless of whether it was his own people or the allied forces, most of them avoided him until he met a giant with a body that was practically a standard muscular man. The first thing that came into view was the fiery red flame beard. This big beard was like a bright lamp. Even if a demon accidentally bumped into it, he would be burned to death by the high temperature of the beard. The square-shaped armor was dark gold in color, but in fact, this armor was more of an ornament. This giant only had a pair of freaking wrist guards, a pair of leg guards, an umbrella-shaped belt, and a winged helmet on his body. There was no armor on the rest of his body, and the bulging and clear outline of his muscles was exposed to the air just like that. However, even though his upper body was bare and he was dressed in a pair of red Spartan underpants, the bluish-green muscles on his body were not real flesh and blood. This was made up of super-hard Titan composite material. It had super hardness and toughness, and could also change shape at will when needed. He was Odin. As the chief guardian, after being personally strengthened by the Titans of the Pantheon, Odin became even more ferocious. Seeing such a small egg, Jaden, rushing towards him, Odin immediately used the Spear of Light. The huge golden spear that was longer than a football field was even more visually shocking in this space that was not too spacious for the giant guardian. In the next second, Odin exhaled and shouted. The muscles all over his body that were stretched to the extreme seemed to turn into a rubber band that was stretched to the extreme, and he threw the spear out in an instant. Jaden raised his hand and raised a ball of flames that clashed with the Spear of Light. Unfortunately, the hellfire that was condensed in a hurry was pierced through by the spear head that was blooming with light, and Jaden suffered a fierce blow on the spot. Jaden, who refused to admit defeat, returned the favor on the spot, and a dazzling blue halo suddenly appeared under Odin's feet. In less than half a second, the halo exploded with a loud bang, and its powerful shadow energy caused even Odin, a 10-story giant, to stagger and fall forward. This was the egg's killer move, Fragmentation Singularity. Both of them suffered a fierce blow, but for both of their extraordinary physiques, it did not hurt. It did not itch. At their level, the traditional sense of Achilles' heel no longer existed. Of course, there was no dodging or anything like that. Two large humanoid creatures with powerful energy competed in each other's defense, vitality, and the ability to cause damage to the enemy. The shadow magic of chicken and egg was powerful. Odin's power of light was also very powerful. Jaden seemed to realize that Odin was not an opponent that he could kill in an instant, and he also calmed down from his anger. When a high-grade Void Lord helped him withstand Odin's fierce slash, he launched a huge trap-type magic. It was a large-scale spatial transfer. The members of the entire front of the coalition army, including Odin and Turim, the Kiraji twin emperors, and more than 10 alliance heroes, including Tyrion and Gavin Rad, were involved. When they came back to their senses, they found that they were already on a huge, square-like platform, surrounded by the void. Countless streams of light that resembled falling stars, as well as the radiance of energy flashed around the platform. Tarim immediately warned, "Be careful. This is the gap between time and space. Don't fall, or you mortals will die." Jaden ignored the reactions of the other mortals and the Titan Guardians. He went straight to Odin, who should have the highest status, and asked, "Where is that little bastard Duke Marcus? Where is he? Why didn't he come?" He was indeed worthy of being called the most perceptive demon. He saw a lot of things from the fact that Odin had fought him head-on just now, but no one had covered or supported Odin. Chapter 2048. It was not that he did not come because he trusted Odin, but because there was a clear lack of connection. Odin was ferocious, and it was obvious that he was not on the same side as the other guardians and mortal heroes. Unexpectedly, when even Tarim was about to scream, Odin suddenly smiled and said, "Guess?" Wow! This move shocked the Alliance army so much that their eyeballs fell to the ground. Looking at the shocked expressions on the faces of his former colleagues and the mortals he looked down on, Odin suddenly became smug. "Don't forget. No matter what, I am the most loyal servant of the Pantheon. Since this is something that the great Amon-Sur approves of, I will do my best to carry it out." The Titan Guardian did not have any kind of explosive operation. The Titans had given these Guardians the trait of absolute obedience, which meant that they would not be surprised. They would unleash as much power as they had. This characteristic of being as steady as an old dog was the common trait of the Titans. Chicken and Eggs was stunned for a moment, and then he became angry. Even though he had already confirmed from Odin's words that Duque was indeed not here, the uneasiness in his heart grew stronger. In his heart, he screamed, "Impossible! They must not have thought of this. Even if they really did do it, they did not have the conditions. Moreover, there was that person in charge. There was no way they would have a chance." Jaden's heart was in a mess, and he kept releasing his ultimate moves. The ultimate move that covered the entire field, Armageddon. The Fracture Singularity, that could send the Titan Guardians flying. And the Bursting Flames of Fear, that could cause a team to be wiped out. All kinds of powerful Eridar tactics were thrown out one after another. But the more ferocious he was, the more it proved the anger in his heart. This was already the third time. The first time was in the Ancient War, where he was tricked by Duque's infernal affairs. The second time was in the Battle of the Sunwell, where he was directly caught in the big toilet bowl of the portal, and his upper body was blown up. The third time was this time. He had been tricked by a mortal and miscalculated 3 times in a row. This was enough to completely ruin his reputation as the Master of Arcane Arts and King of Conspiracies. You think too much. Do you pitiful worms really think that you can deal with the endless demon army with your pitiful tricks? Jaden's angry roar resounded throughout the void battlefield. No answer. No, perhaps the answer of the allied army's powerhouses was that silent sneer and contemptuous look. Everyone believed in Duque. Even Odin, who was at loggerheads with Duque, believed in Duque's Amon-Thul. It sounded a bit tongue-twisting, but it was actually true. Without the restrictions of the Pantheon, Odin might really become a useless teammate in the Alliance army. But no matter how unhappy Odin was with the mortals and his colleagues, his loyalty to the Pantheon was absolute. It was this absolute loyalty that pushed him to make a move that perfectly matched the Alliance army. Since he couldn't split his opponent, the only thing he could do was to face him head-on. At that moment, Jaden hated Archimonde, the other leader of Eridar that he once looked down on. If Archimonde was still alive, and his skeleton was not placed in a museum on Mount Hyjal, perhaps everything would be different. If he was up against a group of Alliance powerhouses with ordinary human bodies, his size would definitely have an advantage. After entering this special space, his body swelled to the height of a 7-story building. Unfortunately, he was up against Odin and Tarim, who were 10 stories tall. Facing these 2 Titan Guardians who had become extremely cooperative, Jaden found that his vitality was weakening very quickly. And because of their attributes, these 2 fellows were quite effective against him. One mainly used holy attacks, coupled with lightning, and the other was pure lightning. The two fierce guardians were already hard to deal with. If Kill, Jaden calmed down and made full use of his home advantage, it was not impossible for him to kill these two fellows. But after adding the other demigods and mortal heroes into the mix, Kill, Jaden was very annoyed. Theon's, Ashbringer, and Gavinrad's new artifact, Wind Elemental King, Al-Akir's Wrath, were a perfect match for the two guardians. What was even more disgusting was the Kiraj twin emperors. After realizing that they could not cooperate with the two guardians, the twin emperors simply retreated to the side and did nothing but fight Kill, Jaden's reinforcements. This was not a void that was completely cut off from the outside world. This was just a special space rift that Kill, Jaden had developed. It was used by him to divide the Alliance powerhouses. From the beginning to the end, he had never thought of separating himself. On this huge void platform that was the size of 4 football fields, there was actually a portal that was specially used to teleport void lords over to help. The twin emperors were guarding the door as door gods. If it was Kill, Jaden dealing with the twin emperors, it would be a piece of cake, but ordinary high-level void lords were really no match for these two brothers. If you were good at physical attacks, let the demon emperor, who was immune to physical attacks, fight you. If your magic was good, let the sword emperor fight you head-on. Anyway, they would just guard the portal and not let you big void lords come in. The twin emperors didn't care about the smaller demons and left them to the Alliance heroes. Interestingly, on the Alliance's side, Malfurion, the powerful healer, also came in at that time. Under full force, the decline of Odin's and Turim's vitality was really greatly slowed down. Kill, Jaden was anxious because he knew that the Void Lords outside were really not enough for the remaining Alliance powerhouses to kill. As long as the Alliance didn't make mistakes and didn't advance rashly, the Void Lords were more like vegetables. Hey! Is it really okay if we don't advance? If we delay any longer, Sargeras will be resurrected, right? Saidan waved the hammer of holy light and smashed the head of an apocalypse guard into a rotten watermelon. Turayan, who was next to her, waved the Quell Zerum, inherited from Anduin Lothar and easily chopped a Shivala lord, and suddenly said, "First of all, we have to believe in Duque. Secondly, I think Duque should have reached some secret agreement with the Pantheon, such as a surprise attack." Saidan wasn't a kid who had never led an army before, and he immediately understood the ultimate plan. If Duque didn't come to the front line, the only possibility was that he went to steal their nest. They went to the Twisted Nether. Saidan lowered his voice. Turayan casually chopped another demon and suddenly laughed. I guess Kill, Jaden also discovered it. Then it doesn't matter if I say it. Although Duque is secretive, his destination isn't hard to guess, there's a 99% chance it's Argus. Why Argus? Saidan was stunned. This has to start from someone blowing up the largest fortress in the Twisted Nether. Turayan was overjoyed and felt that there might be a demon tail wagging on his butt. Chapter 2049. Why Argus? That was a good question. Even Duque himself did not know why the Burning Legion's Achilles heel was on Argus, the planet where the Eritas originated. Unexpectedly, in that secret meeting, it was the Titans who unwittingly told Duque the answer. That was because a certain despicable and shameless Void Duke, the biggest traitor of the Burning Legion in the past 25,000 years, had used the energy recoil from the Well of Eternity to blow up the largest fortress in the distorted void. This had shocked the entire Burning Legion and enraged Sargeras for 10,000 years. It had caused the entire Burning Legion to come to a consensus, the seemingly unsolvable Twisting Nether was not that safe. Since Duque could set off the biggest fireworks in the history of the Twisting Nether in the Ancient War, annihilating billions of demons, if Duque could do it once, he could do it again. So, even though the explosion in the Ancient War did not really hurt Sargeras, Kill, Jaden, and the 3 Archimonde powerhouses, it made the 3 of them feel like they were sitting on pins and needles. After a long discussion, they made an unexpected but reasonable decision, to transfer the soul cores of the 3 of them and all the Void Dukes under the Legion to Argus. This was because there were 2 Titans guarding Argus. The Avenger, Agrima, was once one of the noble titans of the pantheon. After being defeated by Sargeras, he was reborn as a titan of destruction by Sargeras' evil power. He was now entrenched in the core of Argus, guarding the power that could destroy the universe, and the soul cores of the three burning legion powerhouses. The other one was the Nirvanic Argus. That's right, this guy was the planet Argus, a titan born from the planet's soul. Unfortunately, from the day his soul awakened, he was destined to go astray. When Sargeras bewitched the two Erida's powerhouses, he had his eyes on Argus' soul. Because this soul had the power to become a titan. With the constant infusion of dark energy, Argus the Terminator had become a fallen titan around the time of the ancient war. The two fallen titans, Agrima and Argus, were the Burning Legion's ultimate secret weapons. If they didn't take advantage of Sargeras' resurrection in Azeroth, Archimonde hadn't resurrected yet, and Jaden was personally at the front lines, they could take down two fallen titans in one go and destroy the Burning Legion's undying legend. Then, no matter how long they resisted, and how many times they repeated similar battles, the Burning Legion would still not lose in the end. At this moment, more than a light year away from the Azeroth, a spaceship beyond the imagination of mortals was warping through space. This kind of space-folding technology that ignored distance and reached the destination in a way that was almost like cheating was a black technology that even Duque's Earth hadn't developed yet. In the Pantheon Temple, this kind of technology was common. Outside the porthole, there were countless flashes of light. Inside the flying shuttle, there was a slight tremor. Sitting on the captain's throne, Duque looked around. The spaceship was huge. It was originally provided for the use of Titan creations, and the bridge alone was the size of 10 football fields. His eyes were filled with gorgeous Titan-style decorations, towering pillars, and Titan runes everywhere. And the guy driving the ship, it was Duque's old friend, the Observer, Orgarin. This giant Titan creation that seemed to be made up of constellations looked back from time to time, revealing a smile that could have been flattering. This guy probably knew that his fate was in Duque's hands. The captain's throne was so King big, it was originally meant for guardians or titans to sit on. The seat alone was 30 meters by 20 meters, and including the protruding corners, the total area was more than 650 square meters. It was even bigger than Duque's ducal mansion in Stormwind. Feeling the space flashing by outside the spaceship, Duque felt as if he was in a world of silence. But there was a voice in his heart that was becoming clearer and more certain: this was the last battle. Crossing over from Earth, becoming a part of the surging pulse of the river of Azeroth's fate, merging into the main timeline that gathered countless lives and time branches, combining the fate of countless existences and billions of voices of resistance, finally condensing into today's situation. As long as they won this last battle, all the suffering, all the threats would end. Perhaps the competition for survival resources among the various races meant that no matter which world it was, there would never be true peace. At the very least, there wouldn't be any terrifying evil forces like the Burning Legion that would crush a few planets at the drop of a hat. Was it excitement? Was it nervousness? Was it anticipation? Or was it just a desire for closure? Even Duque himself couldn't say for sure. Hot blood flowed in his divine body, it was the roar of the elements, and also the roar of his spirit and soul. But Duque's heart was extremely calm. Quietly watching the monotonous starlight passing by on the main screen, his gaze seemed to pass through the shackles of time. It was his honor to be able to join the world of Azeroth. Except for him, no one else on Earth knew that the game they loved was actually a projection in the mind of a game designer from another world. When the game designers, who were jokingly called Glass Scum, created the game World of Warcraft, they would never have imagined that there was such a world hidden behind their genius design concept. Duque was fortunate enough to witness the destruction of the old Stormwind city in flames. He saw the birth of a brand new alliance in flames and blood. Thanks to his prophetic ability, he changed the fates of countless masters and people. However, this great reversal of fate didn't come only from his gift. It was the struggle of all the people of Azeroth against the fate of destruction. Every hopeful person threw himself into the struggle and wrote a brand new epic with his blood and life. Heroes were born in troubled times. He thought back to the faces that should have died long ago, but were still alive and well because he had changed their fates. Suddenly, Duque felt a sense of satisfaction. Even if it was only in his own spiritual world, looking at them in his own memories and comparing their faces, he actually felt a strange feeling of being shocked by himself. In the game, all the regrets were made up. The current situation was more like the vision that all players, including himself, had hoped for in the past. Duque finally understood that he didn't come to this world alone. He was the embodiment of the best wishes of every World of Warcraft players. Chapter 2050. Thinking of this, Duque was in high spirits. Duque finally understood the meaning of his transmigration to this world. I've never thought of myself as a hero. I always felt that it was a little unreliable for someone who wasn't a hero to do heroic things. I didn't expect that. I've always admired heroes who have done great things, and I yearned to become a hero myself. Suddenly, he laughed bitterly and mocked himself. Ah, a guy like me actually has such a yearning in my heart. What is this? I was born ordinary, and when I see powerful beings, I unconsciously feel afraid and inferior. I didn't expect that it was me like this who had done such great things. It seems that humans are really a kind of limitless creature. The image of the beautiful blue planet that was gradually getting further and further away appeared in his mind. The corner of Duque's mouth curved into a bright smile. Thank you, Azeroth, for letting me live a beautiful life. In the future, I'll continue to rely on you. Even separated by thousands of mountains and rivers, in the endless void, in another part of the distant universe, Duque could still feel that there was a voice in his heart responding to him. The voice was full of affection. Child, I should be the one thanking you. That was the voice of Azeroth's astral soul. Suddenly, a familiar female voice rang in Duque's ear. She covered Azeroth's voice. Inferiority is the fear that mortals have towards the unknown. Heroism is a man's romance. What is there to be ashamed of? Duque, if it weren't for your self-awareness, self-discipline, self-improvement, and pride, do you think I would have taken a liking to a little human like you? Duque turned his head, and was surprised but not surprised to see a noble and proud female elf walking out from beside him. On her head was a golden crown in the shape of thorns, and her purplish-blue cloak seemed to have billions of lightning snakes wriggling inside, flickering non-stop. Her long hair shone like pure gold, and her blue eyes were like the purest sea water. The bowstring hanging diagonally in front of her chest was a stream of flowing wind, and the huge and gorgeous longbow faintly sounded with the sound of wind and thunder. Solidar, Wrath of the Stars. Perhaps now that divine artifacts were everywhere, it was no longer the most dazzling star. However, the meaning it contained, defeating the insufferably arrogant Burning Legion, had always encouraged everyone in the Alliance. The female elf patted his shoulder and smiled at him. What are you afraid of? I, Sylvanas Windrunner, will always be with you. Yo, my little sister, you can't steal all the limelight. A mature, elegant, and beautiful female elf walked up and stood side by side with Queen Sylvie. She was Aurelia, the first woman Duque met in Azeroth. Hey, me too. It was Sasha. What about me? Elusia asked. Following that, one beautiful female silhouette after another leaned over as if to join in the fun. Some of them were beautiful, some were flirtatious, some were gentle and virtuous, some were bold and decisive, some were pure and holy, and some were extremely exotic. Duque turned around and looked at Jaina, Kalia, Tyrande, Vashj, and Iriel. Other than Onyxia and Isera, who were dragon aspects and could not leave, everyone in his harem was here. Duque suddenly revealed a somewhat silly smile. Yo! You're so happy that it's all over your face. You're really shameless. Jaina rebuked Duque, which was rare. Hey! Which shameless disciple seduced his master? Duque teased. Humph. Which shameless impersonated a void lord and used shameless methods to occupy the night elves' high priestess? Tyrande put her hands on her hips confidently. It was as if she was blowing the horn, and a group of women surrounded Duque and attacked him. Who knew that Duque would ignore them all? Whoever rebuked him, he would respond with a smile. It was a drama with 3 women. With such a large group of beauties, if he really argued with every single one of them, then he would be really stupid. Anyway, no matter what they said, wouldn't they still be dealt with by Duque's godly sword? Duque's revenge, that night would be enough. Being stared at by Duque's naughty gaze, a few of the women felt goosebumps. Queen Sylvie put her hands on her hips and stood in front of a few girls who were being bullied by Duque's godly sword without daring to resist. Hey! Duque, we're talking business, what do you mean by that expression? Nothing. I'm just quite happy. Flags like returning home to get married after this battle are ineffective against me. There's a bunch of brats in my hometown now. Yes, Isra was still recovering, so the little brat at home was left to her to take care of. After becoming serious, Duque looked at his women with a gentle gaze. Do you remember all the important points? Got it, the 9 female voices said in unison. All right. We're almost there. Duque turned his head and looked at the demon hunter hero who was squatting in the corner and drawing circles. Oh, no, he was actually just a little unhappy. Illidan, what about you? Illidan was originally unhappy, but when he glanced at Tyrant beside Duque with his eyes made of evil flames, his stiff expression immediately softened. He replied in a low, muffled voice, I've been waiting for this day for 10,000 years. Sigh. The hatred of long-lived races was really scary. One grudge could be remembered for 10,000 years, and they would always be ready for revenge. Fortunately, Duque had Tyrant as a shield, so he was not afraid at all. Sigh. Even good men like Ronan and Turalian had found a home. Unfortunately, the Stormrage brothers were infatuated with love, and Duque could not possibly give up his own woman. This was basically an unsolvable deadlock. In fact, it was very easy for a love rival to get into trouble. To be honest, Duque originally did not intend to trust Illidan, but the world was strange. Ever since that bastard Illidan met Teresa, he had completely changed. He was no longer so gloomy and desperate, as if he had a new spiritual anchor. Thinking of this, Duque felt a little angry. Because Teresa Whisperwind was the daughter that Tyrant gave birth to for him 6 years ago. F***ck, why did I not know that Illidan had a Lolicon attribute? Now, this originally important son of light and shadow, not only did he not go to the tomb of Sargeras to fight with Kill, Jaden, but he also followed this ship to Argus. Duque monitored that the bastard Illidan had opened the pendant on his neck a total of 108 times in this short period of time. Impressively, the 3D portrait of Duque's Teresa was in the pendant. If possible, Duque would rather stab Illidan to death immediately, so that the old man would not be thinking about his daughter. Unfortunately, that pendant was a gift from Tyrant, the relationship between Tyrant and the Stormrage brothers. Sigh. After all, Tyrant's body and mind belonged to Duque. The rest did not matter. Chapter 2051. Interstellar travel had never been an easy task, let alone to an unknown planet whose coordinates were unknown. That was how it was, with a local, a guide, and a mole, it would not be a problem. As the vibration of the folded flight that had been accompanying everyone slowly disappeared, the starlight on the monitor screen of the spaceship began to shorten. In the middle of the screen was a huge planet surrounded by green light. The planet itself was huge, but unfortunately, it did not have the characteristics of a planet with life. It was neither an ocean planet that was dominated by seawater, nor a terrestrial planet covered in forests, let alone the planet of Eden that was known as a paradise for life. It could even be said that Argus was like a sun, a star that could emit light and heat on its own, more like a planet with life. Traces of dark energy filled their eyes, and in their field of vision, a huge yellow-green scar almost split the entire planet in half. In the middle of the screen, there was a huge yellow dot that looked like a whirlpool, and the edge was all green dark energy. Looking at his hometown, Valen's heart ached at the changes here, but at the same time, he was filled with emotion. It's been 25,000 years. I never thought that I would return to Argus one day, although I don't even know if I'm a living person. Valen had kicked the bucket, but he was not completely dead. For the past decade, he had been coexisting with Orgrim in the Soul Box. Until Duque reached a cooperation agreement with the Pantheon, and as the best local, he was resurrected with the help of the Pantheon. It was hard to say that this was a true resurrection, because his body was half holy light creature, half metal. Just like the earth spirit who was cursed by the flesh and blood, and became a special half-earth elemental and half-living creature. Hoof comforted her teacher, Master, it's okay. As long as we win, we can get Argus back. By then, we can even ask the Pantheon for help to restore Argus. Duque, right? Hoof had now sold herself, and of course, she could only count on Duque. Duque smiled bitterly. Damn, that old thing Valen was a cunning one, and I couldn't help but want to help save another planet, but Duque still nodded. Don't worry, as long as we can really defeat the Burning Legion, Argus is nothing to the Pantheon. They won't want to see a planet that can constantly resurrect demons. With that said, Duque complained in his heart, if it weren't for the sake of the Alliance, based on the Pantheon's temperament of purification at the drop of a hat, they would probably blow up Argus directly. Even though Valen had confirmed it a long time ago, he still felt comforted when he heard the news from Duque. As for the landing spot, I suggest here, or here. Valen casually pointed at a few spots on Argus, which had changed beyond recognition. Then, two low female exclamations came from beside Duque. That's amazing. That is indeed the weakness of the army's defense. As expected of one of the three giants. The Eridar twins knelt down and prostrated themselves on the ground, praising Valen. He. Willan pretentiously stroked his three bushy mustaches. Even though the planet has undergone a great change, and 25,000 years have passed, there are some important places that can't be changed. For example, the location of the Antorus Burning Throne. That place itself leads to the core of the entire planet. Controlling that place is equivalent to controlling the entire planet. Duque smiled. It was no wonder that Kil'jaeden had been chasing after Willan for the past 25,000 years. Then, the Eridar twins had been added to the list of targets. I got the defensive map through the servants who still have no choice but to swear loyalty to us sisters, said Elisa's. Everyone, please take a look. This is the latest information before we start hyperdrive, Sailoras said. The twins raised their hands and displayed the defense map of the army on Argus on the huge three-dimensional planet. Duque didn't care about how the two of them made the servants loyal. He only cared about what he wanted, and he found it very quickly. At this time, the observer in charge of driving the ship, Orgaren, suddenly shouted, "Damn, the Burning Legion has expanded their alert range." They received the army's identification signal much earlier than expected. They want us to identify ourselves. At this moment, everyone looked at Illidan. This was the time to verify if the keystone his demon hunters had obtained was effective. Under everyone's gazes, Illidan took out a runestone. That was the ultimate treasure that his most loyal demon hunter had spent more than 20 years to obtain. It was also his biggest asset in this ultimate war. This is a keystone. It's both the galactic coordinates and the prototype of the entire Burning Legion's identification system. No changes can bypass it. The Eridar twins looked at this inconspicuous blue runestone, and their eyes lit up. Yes, the last time the army changed the communication system and password was during the Primordial War 10,000 years ago. That time, the traitor Duque appeared and blew up the Twisted Void Fortress, so they had no choice but to change it. Just changing the password and identification system alone took 100 years. There was no other way. Not only was the entire system complicated, but the army was too large. Tens of thousands of planet destroyers, millions of assault ships, and hundreds of millions of demons had to change the identification system. This huge project had taken countless ARG engineers back then. This was the bitterness of being a demon. Dying of exhaustion, reviving, being forced to continue working by shaman, then dying of exhaustion, reviving again, On the other side, Illidan used his long fingers and black nails to hold the keystone and pressed it into the glowing, perfectly shaped groove on the bridge. On the other side, Queen Sailoras used a little trick. What appeared in front of everyone was a very standard Eridar female warlock, but completely different from the original. On the screen, it was an Eridar male warlock. Hurry up and open the door. I'm so annoyed. I don't know if those clumsy guys have taken good care of my collection these days. If I find out that my vengeful spirit ensemble is missing a part tonight, I'll go crazy. Soon, the other side replied, hey. You're so lucky. You actually avoided trouble because you got lost. However, 3 frontline commanders in Azeroth have been killed. Now they're driving us crazy. Don't expect to have any more days off. What? My days off are gone. Bastard. Which idiot gave the order? Soloras's acting skills were off the charts, and she looked like she was about to explode. The other side shrugged and looked as if he was also very desperate. It was General Kill, Jaden, who personally gave the order to transfer everyone. Ah. Sailoras instantly looked dispirited. After a few more words of greeting, the huge green energy shield surrounding outer space opened a hole, and Duque's spaceship entered. Chapter 2052. They watched as the spaceship flew past 1,000 kilometers away from the space inspection station and entered the landing procedure. The inspector complained, "This ship looks really old. Is it a ship that was snatched from the war with the Draenei?" 10,086. What does that mean? Another Eridar wizard interrupted, "Who cares what he's doing, as long as he's back? Our superiors are going crazy over the lack of planet destroyers. Anyway, any ship that goes to Azeroth and gets hit by a planetary fortress is just a matter of one shot." That's true. I really don't know how the natives of Azeroth built an interstellar fortress. According to their primitive ideas, they probably can't even imagine it. Maybe it's the damn Pantheon's idea. As they chatted, they did not know what they had put in. On the other side of the spaceship, Queen Sailoras humbly knelt down on one knee and continued to explain to everyone. There are too many demons in the Burning Legion. Even if there was no war, there would be Void Lords being defeated by other demons every day. There would also be new Void Lords being nurtured, or Demon Lords who succeeded in defeating the previous Void Lords, or Demon Lord alliances would instantly turn against each other and start a private war. So the composition of the forces under each Demon Lord is constantly changing. Elisa's continued, not to mention high-level commanders like Kill, Jaden, even the elite demons at the squad leader level don't know how many demons they have under them. After all, sometimes when they die, they go back to the twisting nether to wait for resurrection, and they don't have time to report it. Or the squad leader doesn't know how to count. Sailoras seamlessly continued, "The only thing that is strictly monitored is the interstellar portals on Argus. This is because of Master's great cause 10,000 years ago." The Eridar twins had been calling Duque Master for so many years, and it had become very smooth. Everyone was still wary of them, but they always pretended not to see it and did things cautiously. Duque's gaze swept across them. He knew that at least before the Burning Legion was destroyed, they were more reliable. The spaceship began to break into the terrible green atmosphere of Argus. After 25,000 years, Argus was no longer the beautiful planet that Valen knew. Sargeras spared no effort in corrupting Argus with his dark energy, causing the atmosphere of the entire planet to become abnormal. The high concentration of evil energy in the atmosphere would kill an ordinary person on the spot. Their body would be lit up like a match, and even their soul would be incinerated, becoming part of the evil energy of the planet. Duque did not know how the people of Azeroth did it in the original spacetime trajectory of Azeroth. On his side, Willan secretly conjured a holy light shield to envelop the group of mortal experts. For Illidan, Eridar, and the Gemini twins who were demonized or were demons themselves, it was as comfortable as returning home. "Alright, Duque, it's time for you to tell us what we're going to do next." Queen Sylvie was ready to go. She was like a fierce general who was about to charge into the enemy's formation. "Ugh, we're going to do an Assassin's Creed sneak attack," Duque said casually. Assassin's Creed. If you want to do a sneak attack, why don't you call the professionals? Valera, Vanessa, Edwin, and the new legendary orc thief, Garona. You didn't bring any of the 4 thieves of the Alliance. What are you doing? Sensing everyone's gaze, Sailoras protected her master. The place we're about to land belongs to an unpopular mid-tier Void Lord, Galost. He was destroyed in Azeroth 10 days ago, and his soul has just returned to the Twisted Nether. The defense of his territory is very lax. It's just some weak demon guards. The Gemini twins soon realized that their efforts were in vain. The spaceship landed, and as soon as the hatch opened, before the demons in the distance could surround them, Duque opened fire. Countless black, dark shadow hands, made of shadow energy floated in midair. They unscrupulously fired at any demons within a 3-kilometer radius, whether they were in the camp, hiding in the basement, or wandering in the wild. They killed every demon they saw. Bayou, 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 with ear-piercing noises, the smaller imps and hellhounds were blown into ashes, and the larger demon guards and doom guards were left with only half their bodies. In terms of level, the demons here were third-rate at best. More than 90% of them weren't even elites. In front of the ultra-pure Umbra energy, even the Hellhound's natural high magic resistance was negligible. How could they possibly withstand Duque's attacks? As a demigod of Azeroth, nobody could switch to a shadow form and use the skills of an arcanist to bully the little kids among the demons. The experts of the coalition army were dumbfounded. Queen Sylvie lost her temper and asked angrily with her hands on her hips, "Didn't you say you were going to do an Assassin's Creed infiltration?" Duque said innocently, "In my hometown, the so-called Assassin's Creed is to kill all the enemies so that there are no witnesses. If this isn't a perfect infiltration, what is? After all, those useless people can't inform the upper echelons of the Burning Legion when they resurrect. Even if the Legion finds out that something is wrong here, they can slowly confirm the situation when they find out. I'm already done here." "Damn, you're so right. We can't even refute you." The girls were all embarrassed. In fact, it was exactly as Duque thought. The Legion did have a message from the monitors, saying that a large number of demons died in Galost. But a battle between demon lords or demons was just like how humans needed to eat and drink. It was too common. After confirming that those guys were killed by a rain of Umbra arrows, no one cared about it anymore. After all, in the hearts of most demons, the enemy was playing with the holy light. On the other hand, it was also because the Legion wouldn't spread the news that Duke played infernal affairs 10,000 years ago and tricked the Legion everywhere. Even when the Legion mentioned the big explosion in the distorted void, they would say that a certain high-level void lord who was killed in the explosion was conducting a forbidden experiment and blew up the fortress after it failed. No void overlord or above would dare to say that they had been tricked by a mortal powerhouse. Even the largest void fortress had been destroyed by a mortal powerhouse. The demon bosses who had been dominating for 15,000 years still had some face. They wanted face, so they naturally left a huge gap for Duque. Seeing that the main force of the demons around him had been killed, Illidan snapped his fingers, and his elite Illidari demon hunters immediately scattered. This group of nearly 500 demon hunters would transform into the cruelest hunters and hunt all the demons within a 100-kilometer radius. Chapter 2053. Duque ordered, "Valen, keep an eye on the magical ley line beneath our feet. If we're attacked, I need you to turn an area 100 feet deep and half a mile in diameter into a land of holy light within 3 minutes." Valen nodded. "No problem. Give me an hour." Duque looked at the towering mountain at the edge of the camp that was a full 200 meters tall. Sylvanas. An old couple, old partners. One call was enough to let Queen Sylvanas know what Duque was thinking. With a wave of her hand, the 3 Windrunner sisters and Tyron flew to the mountain. They would set up a sniper position on the mountain. There was nothing they couldn't snipe within a 10-kilometer radius. Even though Argus had slightly different elemental laws, Queen Sylvanas easily set off with her sisters using Wind Riding spell, after adapting for a while. On the side, Hoof, Kalia, and Riadaline brought a Naru to the camp's main hall. They were going to use the Naru's holy light to prepare a pure place for everyone to rest. The small-scale purification was done quickly. With a wave of Duque's hand, all the demonic furniture and decorations in the hall were burned to ashes by the fire elements. With a snap of his fingers, countless hands of magic took out the storage from Duque's dimensional bag. There was a typical human-style red carpet, carved wooden seats, and even a large alliance flag that was 8 meters by 3 meters. The entire hall was decorated in Eridar style, and the inside was completely an alliance conference room. Everyone around him didn't know whether to laugh or cry at Duque's meticulousness. With everything ready, Duque felt comfortable. Let's begin. At this moment, all the elites of the Alliance who had followed the spaceship to Argus, be it the scattered demon hunters, the paladins of the Silver Hand, or the selected clergies, felt an inexplicable throb in the hearts of these Alliance professionals. One by one, they turned around and looked at the center of the camp. What they saw was a mysterious world of arcane magic. In the surrounding sky, the green evil visible to the naked eye was all frozen. The evil energy was like a frozen popsicle, motionless. There was neither the sound of wind nor the chirping of insects. Countless blue and white Titan runes poured out from the huge magic circle in the hall, and the camp was covered in dazzling blue. Mysterious and quiet. The Titan runic magic circle seemed to expand endlessly, and soon, the entire campsite was within the range of the magic circle. The dazzling Titan runes dancing in the air caused more and more places to fall into silence. The wind no longer carried the manic roars of evil energy. This small world that was separated from the surrounding green world seemed to have calmed down. Once all the elements entered this area, they immediately and silently prostrated themselves. Duque stood in the center of the magic circle. Diagonally across from him, Jaina and Alucia stood in a triangular formation, chanting a spell along with Duque. Duque didn't need their help, but there was another special reason. But placing them at the eye of the magic circle was also a good training and improvement for them. The power of the Titan magic circle was further injected into the planet, and all the elements that were not directly controlled by the astral soul began to stir. They all gathered around Duque's campsite, tumbling and surging in the air, gathering more and more. At first, the elemental energy was like a small lake, but soon it became boundless, beyond the horizon. After the incantation lasted for half an hour, this place had already turned into a sea of mana. However, for Argus, which was 100 times the size of Earth, this power was still relatively weak compared to the fallen Titan Argus, which was born from the planet. It was not worth mentioning. Phew. Duque exhaled, and his breath was filled with the 4 major elements. We can start the next stage. According to the plan. We won't participate, we're just sensing from the side. Jaina and Alucia nodded at the same time. Duque spread his hands and used the hand gestures to cast the spell. On the sea of magic, it was as if 12 bright moons had risen. Upon closer inspection, one would find that the so-called bright moons were just dim Titan magic circles. With the operation of the magic circle, the turbulent sea of magic began to lack waves, and in the end, there was not even a ripple. The 4 major elements were clearly not connected, but they were mixed together harmoniously. It was like a child's careless painting. Looking down from the sky, as long as one's vision was not blocked by the green clouds that acted as a cover, one would find that this place was completely different from the other areas of Argus. Duque's eyes widened. Jaina and Alucia were surprised to see that Duque's previously clear pupils had changed. The 4 colors turned into 4 petals like a windmill, and slowly rotated clockwise in his pupils. The 4 colors, of course, represented the 4 major elements of earth, water, fire, and wind. At this moment, anyone with the slightest bit of elemental perception could feel that the laws of this land were deviating. The foul and destructive evil energy seemed to be frightened, and was quickly distancing itself from the area in fear. A new power, a new law was descending, and its irresistible power was dominating all elements, taking over everything on this land. Duque's voice sounded. It was not the kind of earth-shattering sound, but in the entire elemental domain, there was not a single elemental creature that could not hear Duque's announcement. It was a majestic, solemn, and irresistible voice. Fill it. Earth element. Fill it. Water element. Fill it. Fire element. Fill it. Wind element. The cycle repeats, followed by the four major elements. In the face of the four major elements that form the foundation of the world, I, the god of elements, Duke Marcus, hereby declare, thou art at my command. My life is with thy sword. With the laws set by the titans of the pantheon as the blueprint. Command the Lord of elements of the four realms. If you are willing to follow this will and this principle, then respond. I hereby vow, I am willing to do all the good in the world. I am willing to destroy all the evil in the world. Thou art the vanguard of conquering the elements of this world, answer my call. Duque gently lifted his left foot and stomped hard on the ground. A smaller portal suddenly appeared on the Titan matrix beneath his feet. The earthy yellow light occupied a quarter of the giant matrix. In that sub-matrix, there was a loud rumble of the earth, and a slightly fat, 100-meter-tall stone phantom slowly materialized within 10 seconds. The figure of Therazane, the mother of stone, suddenly appeared. As soon as she appeared, she knelt on one knee and sang loudly, Therazane, respond to the call of my lord. I am willing to serve my lord and conquer this distant planet. Chapter 2054. Unlike how it had been in history, the Holy Light Army had openly charged up to Fang Xingjian. Although they appeared heroic, they had also suffered great losses. None of the four elemental lords were fools. Especially after experiencing the war with the Titans during the Dark Empire of Azeroth, Neptulin and Therazane were even more aware of the Titan's strength. You've tasted too much of the Azeroth element and are probably numb to it. How does it feel to come to a new planet? Duque asked with a smile. The rest of Azeroth inevitably entered the bitter age of doom. Whether it was the depletion of elements, the lack of talent, or even the retrogression of technology, it had nothing to do with the Pantheon. Neptulin, respond to the call of the Lord. I will drown this planet full of evil flames with seawater in the name of the Master. Duque, the elemental god. Then, there were the other two elemental lords, the flame demon Smoldron and the former wind prince Thunderin. Duque flipped his wrists and raised his palms to the sky. Argus was too huge. Compared to the entire planet, 10,000 square kilometers of land might not even be considered as a hair follicle when compared to the human body. Unless there were too many bugs, causing the skin to rot and stimulating the nerves, then, are you excited? Happy? Fire could be a means, but it would not be the master. More than 9 million Russian soldiers and 17 million civilians died in World War II. Most of them were adult men. This directly led to the imbalance between men and women 70 years after the end of World War II. Only then did the four elemental lords stand up. Thunderin greets the Lord. May the cool breeze sweep away all filth for the Lord. The 400-meter-tall elemental lords knelt in 4 different directions toward the tiny Duque, who was less than 2 meters tall. Anyone who saw this scene would be shocked. The beautiful eyes of the harem ladies sparkled. They were proud of their men. Flame demon Smoldron, not bad. Of course, what Duque did was more than just stimulating the Lord. He did not just dig out the flesh of the burning legion. He simply pulled out the little hook that President Sa had hidden with the vagina shrinking spell and cut it off. Smoldron greets the Lord. I'm willing to share the burden of my master. 10,000 years ago, Sargeras did his best to build this place into the safest rear. Of course, he had to get rid of all unstable factors. When he discovered the primitive and uncontrollable instincts of the elemental creatures, he hated the elemental creatures here. There were countless mites and microscopic parasites on the surface of the human body, but the human body itself did not feel anything. The 4 elemental lords spread their arms, and countless elemental creatures were created on the spot. They were originally elements of Argus, and they were directly gathered by the lords and given the simplest sentience. In the next few days, Duque, Queen Sylvanas, and the other demigods felt that the pantheon was spying on them many times. It was as if he was in the overly majestic temple of the pantheon, with the virtual images of several titans standing on it, watching every move of Argus' advance army with a profound gaze. Therazane said happily, "Not bad." Duque pursed his lips and said nonchalantly, "High profile." "I don't think so. This level of elemental invasion is not even an itch for Argus, the Nirvanic destroyer." In any case, Duque, the tall boss, was holding the fort. It was not their turn to show up. Duque raised his right hand. "Rise, my loyal servants." Next. Argus was larger than Azeroth, so the other three elements were more abundant than Azeroth. Neptulin was the only one who was left in a difficult situation. Most of the fire elemental creatures were transformed into hellfire, but the high-level elemental creatures were directly destroyed. This caused the whole of Argus to fall into a state of elemental vacuum without the rule of high-level elemental creatures. The four elemental lords of Azeroth all knelt outside, which was even more shocking. Although it was not the first time the people who followed them to the roof saw such a scene, they felt their hearts tremble every time they saw it. Regardless of whether they had fallen or not, the Titans were not existences that the elemental lords could challenge. Duque knew very well how dangerous a world war could be to a people, and even to the whole world. The Pantheon and Draenei were responsible for getting the spaceships, and they sent the elite Azeroth professionals to Argus. That kind of siege simply didn't treat elites as elites, they were just cannon fodder. The elemental creatures that were created instinctively followed in the footsteps of their creators, killing in all directions. The four elemental lords all let out strange, inhuman cries. The ancient elemental language expressed the most primitive excitement and excellence. Simple violence was effective, and it was what he was best at. Duque raised his right foot and stomped on the ground. This time, a quarter of the magic circle rotated at high speed. After a few seconds, a similarly burly, dark blue sea giant appeared out of thin air. He also knelt on one knee. Regardless of whether they won or lost, the Pantheon could just run away. With a thought from Duque, a large round hole appeared at the top of the hall. A throne made of fire, ice, and arcane elements slowly lifted Duque up to the roof of the building. 2 seconds later, a dazzling flame giant and an inverted triangular wind elemental creature appeared at the same time. Now, the entire Burning Legion was in the dark and did not know what was going on. Neptulin frowned. "I'm not feeling well." Even Jaina was sensitive enough to notice the change in Duque's prayer. She was also staring at Duque. There was not a single fire elemental creature among the higher-ups of the Legion. Duque smiled mysteriously and put his right index finger in front of his lips. It was a gesture for silence. Sure. Not far away from Duque, Queen Sylvie, who was sitting in the air with her legs crossed and her body supported by the wind, teased, "Yo, you're really high profile." Although the Burning Legion was going to die, they still wanted to preserve as much of Azeroth's vitality as possible. Argus was basically a virgin land that had not been developed yet. That was why Duque used such a sneaky method. The four elemental lords showed different attitudes. Argus had been modified into the Burning Legion's fire domain. There was pitifully little water on the planet, and Neptulin was definitely the most uncomfortable one. Then what are you waiting for? Conquer. Take. Duque pointed into the distance where, Nirvanic, Argus was. Other than that place, everything else is your hunting ground. Go and take all the unclaimed elements for yourself. Walls and whatnot did not exist for the elemental lords. In their elemental vision, Duque's glorious figure could be seen clearly. Not bad, Thunderland rumbled. Chapter 2055. Duque sneaked over to Argus to raid the Burning Legion's home base, using the entire Azeroth as a feint. Whether it was the time or the situation of the battle, even the Titans of the Pantheon were amazed by the speed of the attack. In the entire allied army, only the leaders of the alliance, the Titans, or the demigods knew that Duque had left with his men. The allied army, even Marshal Taylor and the others didn't know that Duque had gone to raid. the Burning Legion was even more in the dark. In fact, when Duque had the 4 elemental lords take over Argus elemental authority, the allied army's powerhouses had only advanced to the 3rd boss of Sardra's tomb. By the time Jaden realized that something was wrong, it was already too late. The chaotic nature of the Burning Legion made Argus look like it was heavily guarded, but in fact, after passing the external inspection, it was just a small matter. Initially, Duke had prepared for the worst, such as how he would forcefully land when the defense line outside the planet was discovered, or how he would be besieged after landing, and how he would defend while forcibly seizing Argus elemental authority. In the end, there was no use of any contingency plans. This was like winking at a blind person, but it was actually quite cool. Just like that, Duque corrupted himself in his temporary palace, camp, controlling everything, throwing the work to others or the elemental lords working below, and focused on monitoring the Burning Legion's messy affairs. When Duque confirmed that the Void Lords around him were all dirty and conflicted, True Mirror Image was activated. Today, he pretended to be an Eridar wizard to attack another faction, and an hour later, he pretended to be a demon to attack a 3rd faction. In just 3 days, he easily turned Argus into a mess with the territories of the lords that spanned over 1,000,000 square kilometers around Antorus' burning throne. None of the Eridar higher-ups could find anything. Because the cause of the disputes was very simple, complaints. The attack on Azeroth was not going smoothly, and many long-existing conflicts began to erupt under the cloud of failure. A demon said that another demon was a coward, and another accused the other of holding them back. Whether it was cursing or blaming, to put it bluntly, it was a bunch of dogs barking at each other. This was because they were the first demons to die in Azeroth. After 10,000 years of adjustment, not all demons would roll into the twisting nether after death. After some high-ranking demons died, their souls would return to Argus. All sorts of fights, big and small, and even all-out wars between lords broke out. At first, it was not noticed by the higher-ups of the Burning Legion. The battle quickly spread like wildfire. By the time the demon lords who stayed behind realized that something was wrong, it was already a civil war. The Burning Legion's ruling structure was quite standard. It was a typical tree structure where 1 gave birth to 2, 2 gave birth to 4. Under Shaman were Archimonde and Kil'jaeden. When these 2 deputy commanders were not around, the power within the army fell into the hands of the matriarch of the Destruction Witch Guild. As the most depraved and fanatical followers of Sargeras, the witches bore an evil mission, to twist the fallen titans into the unstoppable pantheon of darkness. Every matriarch had her own signature torture method. The screams of the victims would ring through the halls of Antorus. It was said that neither mortals nor demons could resist their whispers. Therefore, it was only a matter of time before the Titans collapsed. Their most successful example was, of course, helping Sargeras deal with Avenger, Algrima. This caused their status in the army to rise, and they were second only to the 2 deputy commanders. In the Witches' Guild, there were a total of 4 matriarchs. The first to speak was the Mother of Flames, Nora. She had red skin, 6 arms, and a 4-story tall body. Her body was always surrounded by circles of fire elements, and she always liked to carry 2 greatswords that were more than 10 meters long. Are those bastards crazy? Hee hee. The green-skinned Mother of Shadows, Tima, chuckled. Anyway, it's just a bunch of trash causing trouble. If they want to fight, let them fight. Anyway, once you die in Argus, you can't be resurrected, so we don't have to worry. Idiot. Didn't you sense anything? Her skin was dark purple, and she wore a half-veil to hide her beautiful face that could charm thousands of demons. She was the Mother of the Night, Osala. I smell a rat. Finally, the bronze-skinned Mother of the Universe, Soraya, made the decision. Let the Antoran Commander Council bring Sargeras' evil dogs out to quell all the riots. Kill anyone who doesn't agree. At the same time, strengthen the defense of the Burning Throne. The Antoran Commander Council, back in the golden age of the Eridar civilization, this council was responsible for managing the defense of Argus and maintaining peace. After making a dark deal with Sargeras, these master tacticians used their military talents to organize the burning expedition and destroyed countless worlds. They controlled all the core power of the army. As long as there was an order, they would mercilessly use this terrifying power to destroy anyone who went against the will of the Dark Titans. It could be understood as the central army of the Burning Legion, while the Void Lords of other races led the local armies of their respective mountains. As for Falg and Shatug, who were infused with flames and shadows, they were Sargeras' precious pets. These evil dogs were born to kill and enjoyed destroying their master's enemies. As long as they appeared anywhere other than the Burning Throne, it would be no different from Sargeras' arrival. Matriarch Soraya was using her trump card. The cautiousness of the four matriarchs quickly paid off. They discovered a group of demon hunters attempting to infiltrate the Burning Throne. There weren't many, only 5. When they used the cruelest methods to interrogate them, they didn't get any useful information. Although not every demon hunter could withstand soul interrogation, the ones who confessed only said that Illidan wanted them to go to the lowest level of the throne to find out about Agrima the Avenger. Why would that traitor Illidan want to find out about Agrima? How did he find out about Agrima? Where's Illidan? Isn't he in Azeroth? The series of questions put the matriarchs in a difficult position. They also lacked information. But this was what Duque wanted to do. These demon hunters weren't dead, but a different kind of feint to make the army leaders think that there was a thief, or some hidden enemy that wanted to attack the Burning Throne. For the sake of stability, the matriarchs made the decision to shrink the defense line. But they didn't think that it was necessary to kill Jaden, who was in the middle of an expedition, just a few demon hunters and thieves. No one would have thought that Duque's plan was actually outside the Burning Throne. On the morning of the 30th of September, year 36 of the Dark Portal, the entire planet Argus suddenly shook violently. Chapter 2056. Most of the elements and creatures on the planet were just extras to the planet itself. Like in the World of Warcraft game, a fallen titan transformed into a giant, less than 10 stories tall to fight the players. This was simply unthinkable in the world of Azeroth. It was extremely difficult for titans to enter other worlds because of their large size. If they could shrink to the size of the Guardians, Shaman would not have been unable to pass through the portal in the Ancient War. It was extremely difficult and painful for a titan to shrink to a height of less than 100 meters. It was like a 2-meter-tall man forcing himself into a drawer. Even if he knew how to shrink his bones, it would still be a pain in the ass. If it was not necessary, such as to pass through the portal, where would a titan shrink so small? After Therazane's elemental probing, Duque roughly determined the volume of the lowest level of the Burning Throne. It was a huge hole 3 kilometers high and 100 kilometers in diameter. Taking into account factors such as comfort, Duque estimated that Argus the Nirvanic would be about 1,000 meters tall in its normal state. As for the mass, it was probably in units of 10,000 tons. This deduction left all the Alliance heroes dumbfounded. If everyone rushed to the Burning Throne and suddenly found that the enemy was this size, they would probably retreat in despair even if they were not wiped out. There was no hope of success in challenging an enemy that was not on the same level. After weighing it, even if they used their most powerful attacks, they would only scratch the Nirvanic. Hearing this information, Hoof stuck out his tongue in shock. Duque was not surprised at all. Titans refer to very, very large existences. Since the Titans of the Pantheon are formed from the souls of planets, Argus, the fallen Titan, would not be too small even if it was malnourished. Otherwise, why do you think I had to sneak into Argus and plunder the elemental resources here first? After Duque dispersed the 4 elemental lords to cause trouble, and then used a diversion to confuse the higher-ups of the army, on the 16th day, he finally could not hide it anymore. The huge planet Argus was covered in dark energy, and the entire planet was green. That strange light green color itself represented an immeasurable amount of destructive energy. Energy that destroys life and souls. The energy obtained by destroying planets and galaxies. These energies had made Argus stronger, but the chaotic nature of the dark energy had also reduced the perception of Argus the Terminator. For example, a patient in the final stage of diabetes would often get injured due to a careless wound, causing the wound to fester, and even the entire arm or leg would need to be amputated. Being numb didn't mean that one couldn't notice the wound. When the wound was big enough, it was impossible not to notice it. Furthermore, in order to prevent Smodron and Therazane from controlling too much of the fire and earth elements tainted by evil energy, Duque had set a time for them to return every day to be baptized by the holy light. After more than 80% of the water element, 43% of the fire element, 55% of the wind element, and 41% of the earth element on planet Argus were forcibly seized by the four elemental lords, Argus the Terminator finally realized that something was wrong. Roar! It was a world-shaking roar that resounded throughout the entire Antorus burning throne. Who? Who is it? Who is robbing me of my resources? Despicable thief, come out! Argus the Terminator's furious roar alarmed the entire upper echelons of the Burning Legion, including, of course, the Havoc Witches. They split into three groups. The two matriarchs stayed behind. The matriarch of flames, Nora, rushed out of the burning throne to personally patrol, and the matriarch of the universe, Soraya, rushed to the end of the burning throne. Argus, what the hell happened? After venting his anger, Argus finally said, elements. My elements have been stolen. 1. No, a total of 4 extremely powerful elemental thieves have stolen a large portion of my control over the elements of the entire planet. The matriarchs were all extremely cunning beings. Perhaps their lack of imagination made them unable to immediately associate it with Duque's bold and unconstrained fighting style. Since Argus mentioned 4 powerful elemental thieves, it was not hard to imagine the culprit. To be able to steal the power of a titan, this elemental creature itself was very strong. Besides, it was either they didn't come, or there were 4 of them. Soraya suddenly came to a realization. Damn it! It's the 4 elemental lords of Azeroth. Of course, she knew who the 4 elemental lords of Azeroth listened to. The elemental demigod Duke Marcus on that damned planet had long been the army's #1 enemy. Sargeras and Kill, Jaden's fear of Duque was on par with the Pantheons. No matter how much Soraya didn't get along with the other lords, she didn't dare to hide or hesitate in such a big matter. Unfortunately, it was too late. As soon as the Terminator's rage was vented, Duque knew. Duque, who had secretly set up a magic net all over Argus a long time ago, informed all the experts of the allied army immediately. There were only 2 words in the order, do it. On this day, the one in charge of representing the army's upper echelons was Admiral Aphrax of the Antoran Command Council. Of course, the noble admiral didn't need to patrol the area on foot. She piloted a fleet consisting of 1 space battleship, 3 cruisers, and 8 frigates, and patrolled the area within a 1,000-mile radius of the Burning Throne. This female General Eridar had red skin similar to Kill, Jaden's, and always wore heavy armor. She was one of the rare experts who didn't sell her body, didn't rely on witchcraft, and only relied on her own strength to climb to a high position. But she didn't expect that there would be an enemy who dared to attack her flagship under Argus. Beep! Suddenly, an alarm sounded on the bridge. Alarm? Is it a false alarm? Eridar's crew was a little confused. Which blind damn lord is it? Aphrax frowned. In the next second, she found out that she was wrong. His flagship let out a loud explosion, and the entire bridge was filled with light and shadows. In the blink of an eye, she saw the sky outside. It wasn't something displayed on the screen, but an extremely powerful existence that directly destroyed the deck of the flagship, passed through the large gap of the height of 3 people, and killed its way in. An arc blade surrounded by evil green light easily cut open the stomachs of a few elite demons that rushed up, and the perpetrator entered the Admiral's sight. The first thing she saw was a pair of curved demon horns that were no different from those of the Eridar race. A hybrid demon? Aphrax frowned. Chapter 2057. She suddenly understood why she couldn't find the enemy. These self-proclaimed demon hunters had injected the flesh and souls of demons into their bodies. After suppressing the souls of the demons, they used the power of the demons to attack the Burning Legion. However, the Legion lacked effective detection methods. Unlike those who played with the holy light, those guys were as obvious as lighthouses in the dark in the eyes of the demons. These half-demons, on the other hand, were no different from ordinary weak demons in terms of smell and other senses. But after seeing who it was, Svrax suddenly stood up and gritted her teeth, Illidan's storm rage. "You traitor, how dare you!" That's right, it was the great traitor Illidan who had betrayed her twice. Traitor? Under the blindfold, Illidan's big mouth grinned, and the sharp shark teeth in his mouth looked extremely ferocious. "Sorry, from 10,000 years ago, I pretended to join Sargeras in order to destroy the Burning Legion. I have never betrayed my people." At this time, a pleasant female voice came from outside the broken hole. "Got it. Got it. Hurry up and get to work." "Yes, Tyrande." Only Tyrande could order Illidan around. With Tyrande's order, Illidan suddenly pounced on her like a ferocious beast staring at its prey. "Don't look down on me." Admiral Svrax shouted angrily and went up to meet him without any fear. However, the thought was beautiful, but the reality was harsh. The Admiral, who could summon the wind and rain in Argus, immediately realized that there was a clear gap between her and her opponent. The most important thing was Illidan's mana burn. This move was simply shameless. By activating all the evil energy in the surroundings and using a curse to directly hit the opponent's magic circuit, it would produce an explosive effect. High-level Pharaoh definitely had more than one magic circuit. The specific amount of damage would depend on which part of the magic circuit was hit by the curse. It didn't matter if it caused the opponent's magic backlash. The key was that the entire magic circuit, and even the other circuits that were connected to the circuit, would lose all the magic inside. Without magic, this fierce female general of Eridar was just AF** King foot soldier. When it came to close combat, Illidan had extremely rich experience. Moreover, the attack speed bonus provided by Azanatha's dual blades was unparalleled in the world. A round of slashes from the blades would leave countless wounds on Svrax's body. From the looks of it, she had actually turned into a terrifying bloody person in just a few moves. If she were still in the Antoran Command Council, her two partners would definitely save her. Unfortunately, both of them were not here. Ishka the chief engineer was in the Burning Throne. Meanwhile, General Elidis was on another warship, patrolling in another direction. He was at least 500 kilometers away from her. In fact, General Elidis did not have the spare time to save her because he had also encountered a rare and powerful enemy. Who are you? Do you know that you are provoking the mighty Burning Legion? Faced with the three female elves who had charged into his flagship and were approaching him aggressively from the bridge, General Elidis was on the verge of collapse. Where did these three ferocious girls come from? A moment ago, he was still happily watching his Eridar dancers sing and dance in front of him. The next second, the entire bridge was swept away by the violent lightning and wind elemental power. Before he could even react, his chest had already been pierced by an arrow that contained extremely high lightning energy. Not dying on the spot was already due to his high constitution. Ordinary Void Lords would have already knelt down. Provoke? Ha! The female elven demigod who was the leader let out a light laugh. My man once killed a clone of Sargeras. He enjoyed the glory of a godslayer. I will reluctantly list Argus the Silent Destroyer as my prey. As for you. She did not continue speaking. Her sisters had already raised their divine longbows and gave the final blow to this Eridar general. Not only the two Eridar generals, but also Sargeras' two pet dogs. They followed in their footsteps and died in the ambush. They were originally very strong, like the three heads of the Antoran Parliament. They had a series of special combination skills such as life-sharing. Under normal circumstances, if they attacked the Burning Throne, they would be forced to fight them on their home ground. They would have to face the entropy mines all over the ground, which was extremely annoying. Duque had lured the enemy and feigned an attack, causing the army to foolishly let the three heads of the Antoran Parliament split up. Not only did they move alone, they even split up the two dogs. This gave the Allied army a chance to defeat them one by one. Duque did not think about such a small matter as whether the heroes of the Allied army could complete the mission. If they could not even deal with the enemies that they had split up, then they would not be heroes. In the past, Duque would be very happy if he could get rid of the opposing boss in advance. When one's strength and status were high, there were some things that he did not care about. From the beginning to the end, Duque's gaze was locked on the last two titans in the Antorus burning throne. Other than the two of them, there were no other bosses worthy of Duque's attention. Getting rid of the second and third bosses in the burning throne in advance was just a small appetizer. When Duque said, "Attack," it included the order to serve the main course. The sky here was too disgusting, and it was full of hatred. The chaotic evil energy created violent turbulence, and no flying creature could fly in such a sky. When Prince Thunderin occupied the Nether River, where the burning throne was, everything was possible. Originally, the entire area by the Nether River was filled with burning Legion soldiers because of the martial law. It was not enough to describe the tight security. Whether it was sneaking in or attacking, it would be very difficult. Duque changed his train of thought. Woo, woo, accompanied by a strange sound, all the demons by the Nether River saw a huge meteorite fall from the sky. At this time, no demon thought that it was a real meteorite. What the hell? Which idiot drove a spaceship here? Who cares, an idiot who doesn't know the rules. His soul will naturally fall into the hands of those goddamn matriarchs, and then there will be a good show to watch. The demons were still talking about it at first. Later, everyone realized that something was wrong. This was a real meteorite, not some descending spaceship. And this meteorite was too huge. What was even more unbelievable was that when the meteorite rushed into the atmosphere of Argus, it did not burn up due to the high-speed fall. It felt like it did not even take much effort to break through the atmosphere. Normally, this would be impossible. Chapter 2058. Of course, there were exceptions to everything. If a wind elemental lord happened to occupy that airspace, then when the meteorite fell under the planet's gravity, it would not touch the atmosphere at all. Instead, it would create a space tunnel that was close to a vacuum. Then the meteorite would accelerate at an even more exaggerated speed. Mass and speed. The perfect combination of the two would show a shocking destructive power. Boom! That was a huge impact that shook the entire burning throne. The dust it kicked up even reached the planet's troposphere. Less than 10 kilometers away from the burning throne, the place where a level 1 military camp was had now turned into a huge crater. Tens of thousands of elite demons in the military camp had already been turned into ashes by the terrifying impact and explosion. A ridiculously large meteorite lay quietly in the huge crater that was 1 kilometer deep. The meteorite was burning with flames. The more terrifying thing was yet to come. The blackened shell on the surface of the meteorite was peeling off, revealing a strange substance that emitted a bright light underneath. It was an elemental core. A special elemental core that had not been contaminated by evil energy and had even been treated by the holy light. Each elemental core could be reborn as an elemental creature as long as enough elemental energy was injected into it. These elemental creatures would inherit all the memories of the previous owners of these elemental cores. Almost at the same time this batch of elemental cores fell from the sky, an incomparably exaggerated wave of elements surged towards the landing point. Above the burning throne, the dark energy flame clouds that had been churning for the past 10,000 years were dissipating layer by layer. An unknown gust of wind blew them away, revealing the deep starry sky that the Eridar tribe and other demons had not seen for 25,000 years. In the huge hole, more meteorites were dragging long trails across the sky from north to south, blooming with dazzling light. Finally, they penetrated the atmosphere that had been temporarily modified and accurately fell to the area by the Nether River. These meteorites were the most terrifying space-based bombardment. With unparalleled precision, they completely destroyed the Burning Legion's military camps and the demons that were on standby inside. A series of explosions were reflected in the eyes of the 4 great matriarchs of the Witch Association through the magic mirror. Those sparkling lights were like fiery slaps on their faces. What is that? Matriarch Tima asked. The enemy's attack. Matriarch Nora sneered. B** starred, it's the elemental army. That should be right. Matriarch Asura's face was cold. In the end, Matriarch Soraya reluctantly spat out a name. Duke Marcus. No matter how much the four matriarchs schemed against each other, no matter how much they disliked each other, they knew that once something happened to the burning throne, Sargeras would skin each of them alive and make their souls wail in endless purgatory for eternity. Issue a Class 1 warning signal. Have all the lords of Argus bring their soldiers to the burning throne region. You are allowed to freely attack any suspicious enemy. Prioritize attacking elemental creatures. A series of orders were issued. Unfortunately, they were shocked to find that the orders could not be transmitted at all. There was nothing but static on the magic communication network. They attempted to use the most primitive method, using high-level demon elites to act as messengers. However, within a range of 100 miles from the burning throne, screams almost drowned out everything. This greatly delayed the transmission of the order. Not far from Antorus' burning throne, Duque and the others waited quietly. Duque chuckled. The Burning Legion is really stupid. It's been 10,000 years, and their communication methods haven't changed at all. They can't even learn how to encrypt communication. They deserve to be hacked by me. The core of magic communication was the transmission of arcane elemental changes and the long-distance reconstruction of the elements. If the arcane elemental received too much interference during the transmission process and affected the arrangement of the arcane elemental elements, the transmission would naturally fail. One had to know that the Earth that Duque had transmigrated to was a world that already had all kinds of cryptocurrencies, new cryptography, and blockchains. In the 10 years of preparation, Duque had long since upgraded the Alliance's magic communication system. Who would have thought that compared to the Alliance, the Burning Legion would only use the earliest Morse code communication method? Even an idiot would know that SOS was a call for help. Duque even had the opportunity to use the True Mirror Image spell to impersonate the appearance of the four matriarchs and issue all kinds of unreliable orders to the lords of Argus. For example, if a lord of the Abyss betrayed him, he, the lord of the Doomsday Guards, would quickly go and destroy him. In turn, he would issue a similar order to the Lord of the Abyss. They had always been at odds with each other. After receiving the order from the Burning Legion's higher-ups, the Void Lords below fought even harder. Army to rescue the king. Sorry, that didn't exist. The bombardment of the meteor shower around the burning throne had long destroyed more than half of the area by the Nether River. Countless ancient buildings in the style of Eridar were completely razed to the ground. Almost every main road leading to the burning throne was destroyed or blocked. Every large military camp let out a destructive groan in the flames. While the meteors that fell from the sky destroyed the land, they also built huge craters on the spot. What exactly happened? An Eridar demon who had luckily survived the meteor attack looked at his surroundings in a daze. The flames were spreading endlessly. He looked at the potholes on the ground, the ghastly cracks, and the corpses of his companions all over the ground. It had been too long since Argus had suffered an attack of this scale. This completely exceeded the concept of the Void Lords fighting each other. Ah, this is... He did not even have the time to complete a sentence. An ocean that should not have existed in Argus had completely drowned him. It was the long-awaited, azure blue ocean. A large amount of water was truly fatal to demons who were used to high temperatures. The cold seawater frantically washed against his burning skin, forcefully turning his dark blue skin brittle like a blender. It tore off his skin, revealing the high-temperature muscles, bones, and organs. Then, under the washing of the icy water, everything became brittle over and over again until his entire body was crushed by the seawater. In the burning throne, the four matriarchs looked at the distant scene in horror. It was a huge crater that rose from the ground. The huge mountain wall that was more than 200 meters tall surrounded the entire burning throne. The violent water that came out of nowhere filled the entire space in the crater with water. The burning throne was like a traditional hot pot with smoke coming out of it. It looked extremely ridiculous. The army of millions of demons was reduced to dregs in this ocean. The matriarchs were momentarily stunned. Chapter 2059. God. What was a god? In the eyes of the primitive and ignorant natives, any existence that could use a bit of extraordinary power was a god. For example, a mage that only knew level 0 spells. Or even a modern person that knew how to make fire by rubbing. But the Burning Legion did not have such a country bumpkin. Over the past 25,000 years, the Burning Legion had seen countless civilizations in their expeditions, and they had also destroyed a planet with this number as their base number. In this vast and boundless universe, the only recognized god was the Titan. They had the most exaggerated power, able to move mountains and seas, wantonly creating life and destroying life. It felt as if a random thought had appeared in the minds of the Titans, and it could easily trigger the birth of a brand new galaxy. It was as if a universe was born and destroyed in the blink of an eye. In a sense, the Burning Legion was the successor of this distant legend. There were a total of 3 fallen titans in the Legion. Under the fallen titans, even if it seemed chaotic, there were different levels of demons that took charge of different laws and orders. It was the same for the Pantheon Temple. They weaved different laws and orders, allowing them to interweave with each other, forming all the mountains and rivers, the sun, moon, and stars that could be seen in the mortal world. Complementing the change of seasons on the planet, the awakening of day and night, the 4 major elements that flowed and operated gave birth to new life and civilizations. Perhaps, only at this stage could one be called a god. Everything that happened around Antorus' burning throne could actually be called a miracle. After the 4 elemental lords of Azeroth obtained the elemental authority of Argus, the result of their combined might was to destroy more than half of the region by the Stygian River in a short span of a few dozen breaths. Other than the demons that were patrolling outside or had left the camp due to various reasons, the demons that stayed in the camp were unable to escape the fate of total annihilation. Those that were lucky enough to not be crushed to death by the first wave of falling meteorites were drowned by the elemental army or died in the incomparably huge Forged God Sea. Duke Hydraxis led the Hydraxian water elementals and hunted the demons in this shallow sea. Only the 1 in 10,000 lucky ones were able to rush into the sky before the waves covered the Stygian River. Even so, they were unable to avoid becoming bait for the Wind Elemental Army. They were killed by the Wind Elemental Army under Thunderan's command. Duque sensed everything within 1,000 miles and heard Neptulin's apologies, my lord. I have too little water elemental energy at my disposal. We can't break into the burning throne. Duque then cast his divine will towards the entrance of the burning throne. That incomparably majestic super gate, which was at least 50 stories tall, looked like it could not be submerged by the tide at all. Neptulin channeled water elemental energy into the throne, but the extreme heat from the throne evaporated every single drop of water that passed through the door. It was like an active volcano erupting from the bottom of the sea. A huge amount of water vapor rushed out of the water surface, and the rising water vapor column was actually 1,000 meters high. The water vapor column, which was full of dark energy, had become the new wonder of Argus. Duque comforted Neptulin. Don't worry. You've done well. It was different from the 71% water body on Earth. Argus might not have been like this in the past. Ever since the Burning Legion took charge, the entire planet had been walking further and further down the path of no return. Even though Neptulin had found a lot of underground water with the help of Therazane the Stone Mother, the volume of underground water was less than 10% of the entire planet. Most of them were water bodies that could not be used. With too little water, the entire planet would lack cohesion, and without any external force, it would fall apart as the planet rotated on its own. If Neptulin were to attack the burning throne, the carrier of the astral soul, with so little water elemental energy, it would be difficult for him. At that moment, the Balrog Lord, Madron, came. He knelt on one knee, raised his hands, and paid tribute to Duque. It was a small pinch of fire elemental energy. It looked really, really small, especially when compared to his huge body. No one dared to underestimate this elemental energy that was only the size of a human campfire, because this tiny flame was as bright as an entire star. It was impossible for a mortal hero to look at it directly. With that brightness, one would definitely go blind if they stared at it for 2 seconds. Even though Madran had tried his best to reduce the destructive power of this fire elemental energy, it was still shocking. With a gentle wave of his hand, Duque wrapped it in a purplish-blue Titan rune weave. At some point, hundreds and thousands of mages hovered in the air around Duque. Their faces were still clear, but their bodies had become translucent. They were once the mages on the front lines of the Alliance. After falling on the battlefield, they chose to integrate their souls into the weave. In the sky, a Titan rune magic circle appeared. The mysterious purplish-blue light connected the edges and passed through the heads of the magic staffs in the hands of the soul mages. The light shot back and forth between the staffs, forming a huge Titan magic circle made up of countless smaller Titan runes. This magic circle formed a huge concentric circle above the head of the burning throne. It was a huge inverted conical three-dimensional magic circle that was almost tit for tat with the Antorus burning throne. In the end, Duke raised his artifact staff, Atish, legendary staff of the Guardian, and the 3 crows circling and dancing on the top of the drumstick drew the last and thickest stroke on this mystical giant magic circle that looked like it was about to pour down the sands of time. Duque's gaze transcended time and space. It was the gaze of judgment that looked down on the billions of evil creatures in Argus. It was the gaze of pride and anger that looked down on this scorching, stinking, and decaying world. It's not that I don't want to, it's just that it's not time yet. When the time comes, I'll report everything. Saying a proverb from the ancient celestial empire, his voice added a touch of mystery to the activation of this huge Titan magic circle. Duque looked at the huge door that was constantly spewing flames with a cold, black gaze, and tilted the magic staff in his hand slightly. Feisoho, Te. Authorization from the Pantheon, Kiho. Backlash from the endless universe, Skrfo. Summoning the resentment of billions of creatures, Cute as Jajo. Guidance of the stars, the last sentence was surprisingly in the common language, retribution with destruction. The small cluster of flames that was just offered by Smadron stretched to its maximum length in the short span of 1,000th of a second, turning into a huge flame spike that was more than a kilometer in length. This spike pierced through the center of all the conical magic circles. Finally, it pierced down. The super fire elemental core, which was formed by the aggregation of the most surging fire elements on this planet, was driven by the Titan array and strengthened layer by layer in a way similar to nuclear fusion before being shot out, forming a destructive power that could destroy the world. A bright beam of light with a diameter of at least 300 meters shot out from the layers of inverted conical magic circles, pointing straight at the center of Antorus' burning throne. Inside the burning throne, the demons were already in a state of chaos. Only the 4 great matriarchs of the Witch Coven gritted their teeth and tried their best to maintain everything in the throne. The defense system of the burning throne was activated. A huge green flame rune first appeared on the throne. With it as the center, green light suddenly burst out, forming a series of evil green halos. The halos quickly expanded into rings after rings. Countless evil runes naturally formed runic chains between the rings. Then, 108 magic circles were formed one after another. The elemental spear that Duque mobilized the entire planet's fire element and used it as the foundation collided with the flame shield that the burning throne had accumulated for tens of thousands of years. Did the spear pierce the shield? Did the shield break the spear? The answer to this question was soon found. Heaven and earth lost all other colors, and all that was left was flames. The pure crimson flames and the evil green flames mixed together in the void, almost indistinguishable. In the deepest part of the burning throne, Argus the Silencer's voice rumbled like thunder, Duke Marcus. Do you think you can easily defeat me by stealing my fire element? You underestimate the power of a Titan. In the air, Duque smiled. No, I know very well what a Titan can do. If you were a real Titan, maybe I really wouldn't dare to come. Unfortunately, you're not. You're just a slightly larger watchdog of Sargeras. Do you think Sargeras will allow you to have the full power of a titan? Argus was suddenly speechless. The truth was always cruel. Argus the Silencer had fallen, but it did not mean that he was really stupid. He knew very well that he was far from reaching his peak and limit, and he would never reach it in this lifetime. Sargeras was so scheming, so how could he nurture a subordinate who had the strength to rebel against him in the Burning Legion, and who could very well be a potential traitor? Countless history had proven that rebels did not necessarily want to rebel, but because they had the strength to rebel. This was a kind of tragedy. As long as one of the king's subordinates had the strength to overthrow the king, even if he did not want to, there might be people with ulterior motives who vented their dissatisfaction with the king by nurturing rebels. Therefore, from the moment Argus' astral soul was born, half of his astral soul was devoured by Sargeras. This meant that unless Argus could get back the original part of his astral soul, he would always be incomplete, and would never be able to reach the height of a true titan. He, the fallen titan, would always be in shape. He could not even control a complete planet of Argus. All elemental control was suppressed to less than 30%. For ordinary enemies, this ratio was definitely enough. Duque was not in this category. A god who could control the 4 elements was the only nemesis of Argus. Chapter 2060. No. I'm the great titan. You false god, do you really think you're qualified to challenge me? Argus' voice came from the deepest part of the burning throne again. At the same time, the first clash between spear and shield ended in a tie. The spear could not pierce the shield. When the shield broke the spear, it also exploded. This was more like a simple battle of energy. But Argus the Silent Destroyer immediately realized that Duque was being a rascal. Argus quickly gathered another force, and so did Duque. But what Duque gathered was also the fire element extracted from Argus' planet. You, ha ha ha. Sargeras castrated your ability category and limited the upper limit of your ability. Are you blaming me? Duque's loud laughter traveled thousands of miles through the vibration of the elements. No. This is not the end. The burning throne trembled again, and more dark energy began to flow out. It looked like the entire throne had not only evaporated the seawater around it, but the rising water column looked even greener. Ha! If you want to become stronger, you must first have a little green on your head? Argus, you're thinking too much. Atish in Duque's hand finally unleashed its heaven-defying spatial magic power. 1, 2, a total of 12 teleportation portals the size of Dalajan cities opened in the air, connecting to the void in outer space. The natural suction of the vacuum world turned the 12 teleportation portals into the most terrifying vortex, and everything around them was sucked in. Whether it was seawater, corpses, junk, or the air polluted by dark energy. The burning throne was no different from the world's most terrifying poison gas tank. The dark energy inside could easily bend any existence without the protection of a powerful holy light, turning them into a fallen one in an instant. In such a high concentration of dark energy, even a pure holy light creature like the Naru might not be able to withstand it. Dooku wouldn't foolishly bring his men in if he had nothing to do. In fact, if Duque did not do anything and gave Argus enough time, even the elemental creatures he used to besiege the burning throne would become corrupted elemental creatures under the dark energy pollution. For example, the fire elemental would become the hellfire that the people of Azeroth were familiar with. Under Prince Thunderan's control, 12 exaggerated tornadoes surrounded the entire burning throne, sending all the evil energy leaking out of the throne into the void through the portal. No. No. It shouldn't be like this. Argus roared almost crazily. This time, he sought to take the initiative to attack. In the sky above the burning throne, he gathered a huge ball of demonic flames in an attempt to blast Duque. Duque didn't back down. He also used his purified fire element to fight back. Boom. 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 Again and again, the seemingly meaningless and technical clashes triggered earth-shattering explosions. At the same time, the Void Dukes all over Argus knew that their lairs had been raided no matter how stupid they were. Most Void Dukes claimed that their soul cores were in the distorted void, but in reality, they were stored in the burning throne. No one wanted their soul core to be destroyed. Whether it was voluntary or not, the army of billions of demons began to gather at the Yen River and joined the siege without thinking. When they arrived, they were stunned on the spot. The burning throne, once the core of Argus, was long gone. The entire area by the Pyrolite River had changed beyond recognition. What barracks? What buildings? Everything was gone. In their place was a huge crater that reached into the clouds. Kaboom! The earth rumbled like waves as it surged towards the crater, piling up this brand new mountain range. Every moment, the height of the crater was rising towards the sky. Countless demons who could only walk had two choices if they wanted to rush over to the burning throne. They could either stop and become spectators, or struggle in pain in the waves of rocks like their predecessors. The demons who could fly rushed towards the sky, but the height of the crater soon exceeded 1,000 meters. As they climbed, they were attacked by countless wind elemental creatures. The demons who charged against the mudslide were blocked by swarms of earth elemental creatures, and bombarded by fire elemental creatures. Even if they were lucky enough to pass through this terrifying compound defense line, and could cross the peak of the crater, they would still have to face the combined attacks of the guards of the four elemental lords. They also had to pass through the deep sea, the inner water elemental sea that Neptulin had created by gathering all the water bodies on the planet. On the other side, the battle between Argus the Silent Destroyer and Duque was still going on. After 7 consecutive attacks, the entire sky above the burning throne was filled with chaotic elemental turbulence. But the fallen titan did not choose to come for the 8th time. Of course he could continue fighting, but it was not worth it. Sargeras's restrictions on Argus had caused him to suffer greatly. If Argus could perfectly mobilize the power of the entire planet, then Duque would not be able to do anything. Just like how planet Azeroth did not open up a promotion port for Duque, Duque would be stuck at the peak of demigod. Authority was the cruelest shackle. Never being able to exceed that fixed ratio meant that Duque could always find a loophole in Argus. Now, it was Duque who was digging out Argus' own flesh and blood to use as a weapon to attack Argus. This kind of F***-up fighting method was almost enough to drive Argus crazy. But at this moment, Argus could not even contact Shaman, because Shaman was in Azeroth's resurrection mode. Duque's method of picking this time to cause trouble was a classic example of blocking a river with an iron lock, making it extremely uncomfortable for the opponent to be stuck in a difficult position. Villains who are eyeing the Burning Legion's treasures, listen up. All the treasures are here, come in and take them if you have the ability. The Silent Destroyer's thunderous scolding spread everywhere. Duque smiled in response. I will. But, have you washed your neck clean? I should be the one asking you this. If you want to enter the burning throne, you must be prepared to die. Argus could not be bothered to argue with Duque, and after this scolding, he did not speak anymore. Since the owner had opened the door to welcome the guest, Duque naturally would not stand on ceremony. Just as Duque was about to wave his hand to let Thug No. 1 Illidan attack, a huge humanoid mechanical creation climbed onto the outside of the burning throne with a rumble. Jurassic Terminator. Historically, this war robot was built at the core of Argus and was equipped with weapons that could destroy worlds. Its purpose of existence was to defeat the Holy Light Army. In this life, Duque did not even know if this was the so-called Holy Light Army. Since it was an enemy, there was nothing wrong in fighting it. Chapter 2061. The size of the Terminator robot was actually not any smaller than the gigantic Prince Thunderin who was cruising in the sky. That height was at least 20 stories tall. In order to cooperate with the Terminators, the Burning Throne activated a certain evil spell formation. He did not hesitate to expend a large amount of dark energy to forcefully push away the raging seawater, exposing the entire building outside the burning throne to the air once more. Beside it was a wall of water that was close to 1,000 meters tall. The blazing throne quietly stood in this huge pit surrounded by water. The moment the Terminator appeared, it raised its head, which was glowing with the glow of inorganic electrons, as if it was looking up at the sky. It raised the two thick cannons on its shoulders and prepared to fire two heavy cannons at Duque. Oh! Duque snorted contemptuously. There was no need for Duque to make a move on such a big fellow. After absorbing a large amount of fire element from Argus, Modron had transformed. It had become more terrifying and huge. If it wasn't for his master, Duque, above him, with his current strength, there was nothing wrong with calling himself the king of fire elements. Like a meteor, Smodron descended with a loud crash. His two hooves landed on the back of the Terminator's armor, and his claws pressed down on the Terminator's head. The Flame Demon Lord's huge left claw seemed to be able to tear through the clouds as it clawed at the junction between the helmet and the Terminator's helmet. The Flame Demon's claw erupted with a high temperature, and sparks swept across the sky, lighting up the entire battlefield. The Terminator let out an angry electronic roar. It attempted to stand up with all its might. As it swayed its body, the two huge cannons on its shoulders turned their barrels towards its back. It was obvious that it was unwilling to surrender just like that. Faced with the Terminator's two demonic cannons aimed at him, Smodron's flame demon face revealed an evil smile. Unfortunately, firstly, the Terminator could not see it. Secondly, even if he could see it, his poor intelligence would not be able to understand the meaning behind Smodron's smile. Asterisk boom. Asterisk a thick green laser beam pierced into Smodron's chest. However, it was useless. Using the fire attribute to attack a Flame Lord was truly laughable. Under normal circumstances, if the Terminator's output of evil energy was high enough, he might be able to contaminate Smodron with a large amount of evil energy. Just like how water elemental creatures would turn into poison elementals if they inhaled too much venom, Smodron could also contaminate and corrupt them. Unfortunately, Duque had long been prepared for this. Golden spots of light filled with a holy aura appeared on Smodron's chest. If the Garossi Terminator had his own soul and will, he would probably scream in fright on the spot. How was this the Lord of the Flames? This was clearly the new leader of the Holy Light Flame Church. The purified fire elements were transferred from the Flame Demon's chest to his left claw in the blink of an eye. He viciously clawed at the Terminator's mechanical head. The sharp claws scraped against the hard metal skull, producing a shrill sound that could make a mortal collapse. Soon after, an ultra-high temperature of over 10,000 degrees Celsius spewed out from the tip of the claw, causing the Terminator's skull to soften in one breath. Pooh! Puff! Puff! Four claws finally pierced into the metal skull. The new Flame Demon King displayed his amazing strength, and with a series of metallic crackles, he twisted the Terminator's head off. The Garossi Terminator was not a living creature, and having its head torn off was not enough to completely destroy it. A cold voice came out of the proud Flame Devil's mouth, Starflame burst. The fire elements that originated from Argus and had been refined to the highest purity by the Flame Demon King in the elemental domain revolved around Smodron's body and then converged into one. A new Flame Demon's hand was formed in Smodron's raised palm. But the size of this Flame Demon hammer was as big as an Alliance's flying battleship. This giant flame hammer that seemed to be able to stretch across the heavens and earth smashed into the Terminator's neck where its head was missing. There was a loud explosion like that of a nuclear explosion. If the Terminator was a living creature, this would have been an incomparably shrill scream. Within the huge metal body, countless beams of fire penetrated through the metal edges or some weak corners that outsiders could not detect. In less than 2 seconds, the Terminator exploded. The mushroom cloud-level explosion actually broke the Terminator mech into 2 pieces, and every joint on its body experienced the most violent explosion. Countless metal fragments shot out from the broken parts, sweeping everything within a kilometer. When the shockwaves of the explosion finally subsided, countless fragments slowly fell from the sky. My lord, the road ahead has been opened. Smodron's huge body knelt down on one knee towards Duque, who was in midair. Very good. Follow the plan. Smodron flapped his flame demon wings and flew back into the sky. He would continue to form a line of defense with the other 3 elemental lords, preventing any Burning Legion Void Lords from entering the Antorus Burning Throne and hindering the duel between Duque and Argus. Duque looked around. Beside him, the group of Alliance heroes had long been waiting. Supported by Queen Sylvia's wind magic, everyone was standing in the air. There was an unconcealable eagerness on their faces. Duque smiled and pointed at the burning throne that was submerged in water. "Let's begin." Vashti, in her Naga form, waved one of her arms, and the magical defense around the burning throne immediately began to collapse. A shattering sound came from the elemental domain. In an instant, the burning throne that had been exposed to the air was once again covered in water. However, Vashti's spell once again opened up a passage for the Alliance powerhouses to break through. A whirlpool with a diameter of 100 meters went straight to the side wall of the burning throne. There was a large hole that had been shattered by the impact of the water elements. It looked like Vashti had done something unnecessary, but that was not the case. That passage just now was in the hands of the matriarch hiding in the throne. No one knew what kind of attack the Alliance heroes would encounter when they landed. Something like a passage was always the safest in the hands of one's own people. Without needing Vashti's instructions, Illidan, who was the most anxious, was the first to rush down. He spread his demonic wings, and his burly body turned into a black stream of light. Behind him, more Alliance heroes skillfully manipulated the wind elements that were under their control and began to fall at high speed in coordination with the acceleration of gravity. A 1,000-meter fall was definitely more exciting than parachuting for mortals. For these heroes who had trained their bodies to the limits of the mortal world, it was not a problem. The powerful impact was completely offset by the wind elements surrounding them. When falling into the burning throne, almost every hero smashed a large pit in the ground when they landed. The violent impact was perfectly poured onto the ground by the wind elemental shield. Chapter 2062. Large cracks spread across the solid floor tiles. The sacred land of the Burning Legion that no one had dared to desecrate for 25,000 years had been turned into a mess. "Oh! We're finally here." All the Alliance heroes looked around and were extremely emotional. In the distance, the elite demons hidden in the corners of the burning throne surged in like a tide. "This number." Kalia frowned slightly. "What are you talking about? You should be used to this level of demonic attacks, right? Don't make me doubt the strength of the invincible Alliance hero team." Illidan said with a hint of playfulness. "Huh? At this point in time, does the Alliance hero squad still need to prove themselves?" Duke slowly descended under the support of a cloud of fire. Feeling Duke's gaze, Illidan curled his lips and turned his head to look at the demon hunters that had followed him down. "Little ones, the heroes of the Alliance have always fought against these guys and won. Don't let them look down on you." At his command, hundreds of elite demon hunters flapped their wings and descended at high speed. They quickly charged into the demon formation and waved their unique curved blades, ferociously reaping the lives of the demons. Just then, more members of the allied army gathered. "Attack!" Duque said softly, and the hero team immediately charged deeper. The first terminator of the first 3 bosses of the Burning Throne had been destroyed by Modron. The second boss was one of the 2 evil dogs of President Sa, and had died in an ambush along with the third boss. In reality, the third boss, Antaram, was the only boss left in the Great Engineer Alliance. "I'll be right back," Queen Sylvia said casually. The women of the Windrunner family were just that tough. Especially after giving birth to a daughter, Duque felt that the 3 Windrunner sisters were unbelievably reckless on the battlefield. Was it because they had children that they were fearless? However, it would be best if Duque personally dealt with the 4th boss. The teleportation hub maintained by the guardian of the teleportation portal, Hasabel, was the key for the Burning Legion to send its evil army to countless worlds. Using the teleportation portals that led to various strategic locations in the Dark Void, Hasabel could unleash the army's firepower on anyone who dared to oppose her. Of course, this was also the only way for the Burning Throne to replenish its forces. Duque had placed the 4 elemental lords outside of the Burning Throne. It was true that he was also skilled in spatial magic. However, the Burning Throne used a modified teleportation gate produced by the Pantheon Temple. Its stability and output power were among the best in the entire universe. Even though Duque was constantly interfering, he could not completely stop the army from continuously sending Void Dukes through the most powerful ancient teleportation gate. By the time Duque and the others arrived, there were already more than 100 Void Dukes gathered near the teleportation gate hub. Among them were Hound King Hacker, who was a well-known lord in the history of Azeroth. The names of the various Void Dukes kept popping up on Duque's retina. This was what the system marked after comparing them with the intelligence of the army. Not only did he obtain the information from Infernal Affairs 10,000 years ago, but he also had the contribution of the Eridar Gemini. The accuracy of the information was as high as 99%. There were quite a few lords, but not many famous generals. This was the advantage of Duque's timing. Lord Kazak and the others had just been transferred to Sargera's tomb by Kill, Jaden. Most of the remaining lords in the Burning Throne were second-rate lords. It seemed like the matriarchs also knew that sending a large number of ordinary demons in was like sending them to their deaths. They could not even block the passageway. They had to think of a way to take the elite route. This was really delightful. Without needing Duque to give the order, the fierce men and women beside him had already charged over. The Alliance heroes had crossed countless light years and more than half the universe. They were not here to watch the show. With Illidan at the lead, the heroes cut into the demon army led by Hasable. From the first encounter, the battle seemed to have reached its climax. The small number of Alliance heroes was like a raging tide. Their attacks covered every evil demon in sight. The green flames of Illidan Azanatha's dual blades, the golden flames of the divine artifact axe, Flame Joy, Jaina's frost divine artifact staff, Ebony Chill, that she inherited from the first guardian of Tirisfal, Aladi, they used their respective divine artifacts to unleash waves of dazzling light that shone with different colors. These dazzling lights formed a raging tide of energy, and the flag that symbolized the Burning Legion was continuously destroyed. But occasionally, as the light of the teleportation gate lit up, they would reappear. This was especially so for the high-level Void Dukes whose soul cores were stored in Argus. They launched an unyielding resistance against the Alliance heroes. One of the matriarchs had just been turned into a beehive by Tyrant and Vashj, but she still managed to hold on to 18 arrows stuck in her vitals, charging towards the two of them for a dozen meters before collapsing to the ground, opening up a temporary path for the lords behind her to charge. The deafening battle cries converged into an invisible wall, as if it could stop the advance of the Azeroth heroes. Just as Duque had predicted, the scales of victory were tilting towards the Alliance. Even if the Alliance did not close the teleportation gate hub here, the situation would inevitably slip to the worst. No matter how strong the Alliance heroes were, they could not destroy an army of hundreds of millions of demons on their own. But, before the demon army entered the Burning Throne, they could just close the teleportation gate. This is the end. Duke Marcus. You will die here, Hasable roared as he charged over. This female lord of Eridar, who was dressed in dark green armor and was covered in dark red, pounced forward. She was so ferocious that in front of Duque, she ate Elusia's full-powered, flame blast. This was not a case of a high-level mysterious person crushing a low-level mysterious person. She was indeed injured. But she still charged forward while howling. Duque tilted his head and blinked. Let's put aside the problem of strength for now. Who gave you the courage to challenge me? Even though the high-level Void Dukes guarding the Burning Legion were all demigods, this fellow's courage was admirable. Hasable made her move. She did something she should not have done. Spatial fist. Simply put, it was like throwing one's fist into a small portal, and then opening a small portal at an angle that the enemy couldn't notice, throwing one's fist out and ruthlessly smashing the enemy's vitals. This kind of black technology-like fist technique was an unbeatable scoundrel punch to enemies who did not have spatial magic abilities. This was because the fist could come from any angle and deal a fatal blow to the enemy. Chapter 2063. A tragedy had happened. Intelligence asymmetry was a very tragic thing. The Burning Legion had placed great importance on Duque, but the Legion was too large. No matter how much Kill, Jaden valued Duque, he couldn't possibly reveal all the information the Legion had gathered about Duque to the billions of demons. Apart from the Void Dukes who had gone on an expedition to Azeroth, no one would know about Duque. The Legion couldn't possibly put up posters of Duque's name all over Argus and the twisting nether for a mere native demigod, could they? That wouldn't be sharing information, but showing weakness. As a result, the defenders of Argus didn't know much about Duque. Hazel's life was at stake. She felt her arm go numb as she passed through the portal, as if her hand had become an ice sculpture. Just like that, all the sensations in her arm were taken away. In that instant, it was as if a weak blade of grass had been crushed by a sudden storm. "WH." Hazel cried out in shock. An overwhelming power was emanating from the tiny human in front of him. It wasn't wind pressure that contained a large amount of elemental energy. This was a turbulent flow of spatial fluctuations that could only be seen by those who had the same spatial magic ability as her. It had been 25,000 years, right? The last time she had felt something like this was when she first met Sargeras. Hazel was like a mortal who had been blown away by a bone-chilling north wind. Her body trembled in front of that tiny human. Impossible." Hazel looked at her right arm, which was bleeding profusely, and stumbled backward. She screamed. Just as she raised her left hand to cast a spell, another spatial ripple appeared. Right in front of her, the space in her field of vision was distorted. A portal with a blue border quickly formed above her head. In less than a tenth of a second, it had expanded to the size of a tank. In the next instant, the portal shot toward Hazel like a cowboy's lasso. It was so fast that she only had time to turn her head, and the portal was already stuck on her neck and shoulder. Very few people were willing to describe how terrifying it was to be stuck in a portal. The fourth boss of the Burning Throne, Hazel, used her body and life to show the world once more. Her entire head, shoulder, and pauldrons disappeared. A line of blood, an extremely neat cut, appeared at the point where her shoulder and neck connected. After cutting off Hazel's head, a streak of light shot out from the closed portal. It looked no different from the brilliance of an arcane missile that streaked across the sky. Many demons and Void Dukes didn't even think of dodging. The purplish-blue light continued to extend backward. It created a ripple in space and swept across the rather spacious platform of the portal hub. Finally, one of the demons realized that something was wrong. All the abyss devils that were swept by the ribbon of light suddenly froze in place, as if they had been immobilized. When the elite demons and high-level Void Dukes at the back hurriedly threw themselves to the ground, they heard the sound of PSSST. Puchi. A series of soft sounds could be heard. A straight, slanted line of blood immediately appeared on the evil demon's chest and abdomen. The next moment, their bodies were severed in the middle, row by row. Time seemed to have stopped at that moment. The remaining evil demons all had shocked expressions on their faces. They all screamed in unison, "Impossible!" In the sky full of blue-black blood mist. Including the guardian of the portal hub, Hasable, more than 20 Void Dukes and 300 elite evil demons were all cut in half. Their upper bodies, which had lost control of their nerves, twisted in all sorts of unnatural positions before collapsing to the ground. All the evil demons on the conical surface, regardless of whether they were strong or weak, they were completely annihilated. Not just the Burning Legion, even the allied heroes' jaws dropped. Duque said calmly, "If I don't even have this strength, how can I challenge the fallen titan? Also, this move can only be used on enemies weaker than me." Something like spatial slash sounded awesome. In reality, it was just a highly mysterious energy transmission. If they both used spatial magic, the weaker side would be instantly killed. That was the difference. While Duque wiped out the evil demons and attracted the attention of all the Void Dukes, Jaina chanted an incantation. The powerful arcane elemental energy converged into one massive arcane bomb after another. These arcane energy evolved from the Titan runes exploded on the teleportation portals, causing an exaggerated energy shock and instantly destroying more than half of the teleportation portals. The teleportation portals that were connected to the distorted void were immediately detonated. The wild energy turbulence caused the area the size of several football fields to groan in the wild elemental waves. Without the spatial barrier, the other elements that had accumulated on the top of the burning throne could finally spread deeper into the throne without any hindrance. The ornate Irida-style pillars and the corridors full of murals and sculptures started to collapse. The originally sturdy floor tiles that even a lord of the abyss wouldn't break when stepping on them were swept up by the explosions like waves in the sea. This kind of damage was even more terrifying than a magnitude 12 earthquake. Half of the burning throne was turned into a mess. Strangely, the Alliance heroes were unscathed. All the dissipating energy and flying bricks were blocked by a vast spatial curtain wall. When ordinary energy collided with it, it would only cause a ripple-like fluctuation and disappear without a trace after a few moments. Of course, the evil demons and void dukes that were protected by the curtain wall were only delayed to death for a minute or two. Facing a group of Alliance heroes that were fully equipped with divine artifacts, vicious, oh no, rich enough to blind a dog's eyes, these lords that were forcefully dragged here could not put up much resistance. Illidan cut these guys down like chopping vegetables. Vashti shot them down like she was practicing archery in a shooting range. The huge teleportation portal hub was completely silent in less than 5 minutes. The Alliance army stopped advancing. Duque pressed one hand on the largest teleportation portal in the teleportation hub and smiled. Come out. My allies. The portal that was 20 stories tall was no longer shrouded in the green glow of dark energy. Instead, it was glowing in azure light. When the teleportation portal opened, everyone first felt the unique holy aura on the other side and saw an old acquaintance. Chapter 2064. The observer, Orgarin, did not participate in the attack after he landed on planet Argus. Instead, he used the portal to go to a hidden Pantheon stronghold nearby. There, he gathered a powerful army. The cautious Amon Thul did not directly send out his direct troops. Instead, he activated a secret factory similar to Odal from a planet that had not been completely destroyed by the Burning Legion. There, he produced a large batch of Titan creations and let Orgarin lead them to the Burning Throne. The premise was that Duque's attack was successful. Duque glanced at the 10-story tall giants behind Orgarin. They looked about the same as Torim and the other protectors. In reality, Amon Thul and the others were still holding back. These newly created Titan creations were not at the level of the protectors. At most, they were close to the level of Alcavan's 4 protectors. Of course, just in case, this was enough. I'll leave the safety of this place to you. Duque ordered Orgarin like he was ordering his subordinates. Orgarin, who had once held the power to decide the fate of Azeroth, was now like a grandson. Not only was Duque polite, even if Duque spoke ill of him, he had to endure it. Moreover, Duque did not treat him badly. In the name of the Observer, I swear to defend this place with my life. Until victory. Of course, he did not finish his sentence. If things went south, Amon Thul had given him a secret order to bring Duque away safely. The gigantic protectors came out in a line. Not only did they quickly occupy the teleportation hub, they even headed to the upper levels of the Burning Throne. They wanted to ensure that the elemental army outside could provide support when necessary. Duque nodded. He then saw Queen Sylvanas return. In reality, it was not Queen Sylvanas who took action this time. She was there to hold the line for her eldest and third sisters. A mere great engineer of the Parliament was not worth her personal attention. Duque opened the second portal. Oh! Old friend. You really succeeded. I'm so happy. The one who appeared at the portal was his old friend, the great gnome craftsman Jurban. With a call, a group of Alliance heroes quickly drove the similarly large Gundam robot over. However, most of the drivers were gnomes. Most of the infantrymen here were paladins of the Silver Hand Knights and priests of the Church of Holy Light. Time is of the essence. Sir Willan will lead the way for you. Duque nodded at Willan and looked at the leader of the Blood Elf Paladins, Riataline. With a straight face, Riataline slapped her golden shield and said, "In the name of the Guardian of Truth." The Titan Guardians Tyr and Azardas forged this shield after the fall of their companion Lorcan. They handed over the Guardian of Truth to a Vrykul warrior and thus exposed Loken's plot. Tyr and his companions later succeeded in stealing the Norgannon disc, and the Vrykul warriors covered their retreat, delaying many of Loken's servants. Exasperated, Loken sent out terrifying monsters to pursue Tyr's party, causing Tyr to die in battle. Later, this Vrykul warrior moved to the storm fjord of the Broken Islands, and this shield was finally buried in the Path of Kings. After the Pantheon and the Alliance formed an alliance, the whereabouts of this shield was also revealed. Now, there were at least 4 digits of paladins in the Alliance holding the Guardian of Truth, and the one in Riadaline's hand was the original. The reason Duke had sent Jurban here was to steal the black technology. The Burning Legion made the people of Azeroth unhappy, and taking the technology of the Legion was not stealing. Yes, it was stealing. There was nothing wrong with it. The cooperation between the Alliance and the Pantheon was not like asking a tiger for its skin, and Duque was not afraid of Amon Thul being immoral. Cooperation was one thing, and how much technology the Pantheon was willing to give to the people of Azeroth was another. Thinking 3 steps before taking 1 step was the basic quality of a leader. Duque could already see the future. If they really won this battle, Azeroth would also have to develop itself, right? If he did not come to Argus to get some money, he would be letting himself down. What if the entire planet suddenly exploded after defeating Argus the Nirvanic? That would really feel like he was working for the Pantheon for free. Taking advantage of the good momentum of the Alliance's attack, Duque had long since ordered Willan to take Jurban to the various core areas of the Burning Throne to plunder technology, intelligence, and valuable equipment. Originally, it would have been better if the Eridar Gemini, the spy, led the team. In the end, Duque did not take the gamble. It was not rare for a demon to betray him again. After squeezing out all the intelligence from the Gemini, Duque put them to rest. At the same time, on the Broken Isles of Azeroth, on the huge battlefield surrounding the tomb of Sargeras, the Alliance was at a huge disadvantage. As a sinister and cunning person, Jaden still had some tricks up his sleeve. One of them was that with Sargeras' revival, the invasion of the origin of planet Azeroth also began to strengthen. What followed was the opening of more teleportation portals. In the ancient war 10,000 years ago, by absorbing the energy of this planet and using the Well of Eternity as a response, Sargeras had almost completed the teleportation portal that could allow a miniature titan to pass through. If not for the fact that the one responsible for opening the portal was a spy with the surname Du, perhaps the people of Azeroth would have tragically typed GG. This time, Sargeras had used hundreds of years to let the corpse of his clone contaminate the Moon Goddess Temple, as well as the land that had once been a part of the Well of Eternity. In return, he had also obtained a portion of planet Azeroth's power. It was impossible to open a teleportation portal to Azeroth from the distorted void. This rule was ineffective against the teleportation portal that connected to the distorted void that Azeroth had opened itself. A huge change was happening on the battlefield. About 2 hours had passed since the elite troops of the Alliance, including the Guardians and Alliance heroes, entered the tomb of Sargeras. The number of demons that appeared on the battlefield suddenly increased exponentially. At first, dozens of teleportation portals that emitted an ominous green light opened, followed by hundreds, thousands. Although this number stopped at around 3,000, the demons that came out of the teleportation portals became more and more berserk. At first, some of the teleportation portals were so small that only imps could pass through, but most of them could pass through the Hellhounds, and then the demon guards. The Alliance's 460mm holy light cannons might be able to send over 100 demon guards to the afterlife, but at the same time, there might be 200 demons that came in. Looking at the battlefield from afar, this battle seemed to have reached its climax. Even the Guardian Dragon, who was overlooking this scene from the void battlefield, was worried. Duque. Isra murmured. Chapter 2065. On the battlefield on planet Azeroth, the disadvantage of the Alliance army was obvious. With the main force of the Alliance army on the main battlefield, they were still unable to stop the demon army from charging into this world, let alone the other battlefronts. When Jaden no longer held back, the number of army battleships that charged into the atmosphere increased by 10 times. If that was all, then these battleships were just bait for the two sky fortresses. The crux of the matter was that the Burning Legion had made a move that resembled the ruthlessness of a galactic war. They had found a galactic fortress. This was a fortress obtained from an unknown civilization that had been annihilated. Originally, it would not have been used. However, the resilience of planet Azeroth made the army suffer. The MOR craftsmen added a space-folding engine to this fortress, and after spending so much time, they finally dragged it to Azeroth. Fortress versus fortress. Although this, Demon King, fortress was not as big as Izeron Fortress, the key was that the army had a strong fulcrum. Even if the main cannons of the fortresses started a fierce battle, it would not be possible to destroy the enemy in a short period of time. After all, this, Demon King, fortress was modified from an or asteroid that was 80% metal. The Alliance army had tried to attack the enemy's engine. Theoretically, if they destroyed the enemy's engine, they would be able to make the enemy spin in the void and fly to an unknown place. However, the demons had their brute force. The engine was indeed destroyed, but the army used tens of thousands of Apocalypse guards to forcefully fly out of the fortress, using manpower to change the position of the fortress, and continued to bombard Izeron. If the technology was not enough, they would use manpower to make up for it. This scene reminded the Alliance army of the second battle at the Dark Portal. The dwarves' giant cannons did not have suitable ammunition, so the dwarves directly used manpower to carry a ton of artillery shells to reload. This move was really useless on planet Azeroth. The two fire and wind elemental armies, as well as the void battlefield led by the 5 dragon aspects of the Dragon Sleep Temple, could only prevent the void battlefield from collapsing and had a certain degree of interception ability. In fact, as more and more army assault ships landed on Azeroth, there were signs of collapse everywhere. The reinforcements of the Allied forces had long been overloaded. No matter how many SOS calls and magic messages came from below, the lieutenant of the Allied Army Command could only tell the other side in a heartbroken tone, "The Allied Army has no more mobile troops to send out. Please hold the fort and wait for reinforcements. If you really can't hold on, please execute the evacuation plan." Before the war, the Allied Forces Command authorized the commanders to make their own judgments. How could it be that easy to judge for oneself? If the portal were to send demons over, this piece of land would be completely destroyed. The east and west plague lands of Lordaeron that had been corroded by the plague would eventually have the druids purify the land and restore vitality. The land that was completely infested by the dark powers had no chance of recovery. Just look at the cursed land where the dark portal was located. Dan had destroyed that piece of land for 36 years. The Alliance had tried many methods to recover it, but they were all useless. The commanders could only grit their teeth and persevere. In the various cities and towns of the Alliance territory, countless people came out of various shelters and gathered into several torrents, passing through the cities and towns under the night sky. Their target was the armory of the Alliance camp. Just now, the commanders of the various war zones had issued the final mobilization order. All healthy humans above the age of 12 and under the age of 60 in the Alliance, and all races included in the category of adults, as long as they had received military training, would officially join the active service. The long line of people was quite quiet. They would only whisper at most, but there was no noise or complaints. They quietly waited for the quartermaster to distribute the weapons. It was no longer the useless swords, but the standard AK-47 automatic rifles of the Alliance. Each person was issued 6 magazines, a total of 180 bullets engraved with holy light runes, which could effectively fight against small and medium-sized demons such as imps, hellhounds, and demon guards. In addition, every tactical team of 7 people was issued an anti-large demonic weapon called Iron Fist. 5 rounds of ammunition was also effective against the ordinary demons of the Lords of the Abyss. Even more retired Alliance veterans were allowed to pilot the steel giant, Jim, that they spoke of. This steel robot was officially mass-produced by the Alliance 5 years ago. It could synchronize with the movements of the driver and release certain professional skills. Its existence was to allow the mortals of the Alliance to have the ability to fight against the giant demons such as Hellfire and Dark Lord. Over the years, the Alliance military factories had been working hard to mass-produce these things. Unfortunately, except for the capitals of the Alliance and hubs such as Goldshire City, which had over 1,000 Gundams and Jim, other places like Moon Creek City in the western wilderness could only get 100 Jim at most. Even so, people were quite grateful to the Alliance. Now, the warriors heard from their fathers every day how bitter the Alliance warriors were. In the third battle of the Dark Portal, they fought against the demon army with their flesh and blood and clumsy steam tanks. In the territory of the Night Elves, with the Mount Hyjal defense line as the core. From time to time, the light of teleportation gates flashed on several hills, and more Blood Elf mages appeared. In the sky, groups of Vargri and the Dragon Hawks of the Elves were flying toward a new army landing point in the east. At different altitudes, these air forces were arranged in several groups of square formations. On the ground, the Druids were using the new magic given by the Titan goddess Iona, the Life Giver, to summon the forest. Countless ancient trees were awakened, and with their own will, they turned into Treants and participated in this battle. On both sides of the Treant army, there were elf sentinels riding Nightsaber. These beautiful warriors were holding the latest magic weapons produced in Order. Many water elemental creatures followed the Treants. Their water magic was a powerful weapon to ensure that the Treants would not be burned by the army's flames. Finally, the earth shook, and the silhouettes of hill giants appeared in the forest. These behemoths swayed as they walked in the valley, almost as tall as the lowest hill. Their size was even higher than the hellfire of the Burning Legion. On planet Azeroth, similar scenes were everywhere. In the Alliance command, the generals used the images sent by the magician's eyes to silently watch the armies one after another. Everyone knew that even if the Alliance mobilized tens of millions of intelligent beings on the planet, it would still not be enough. When the army teleported more than 100 million demons to this world, that would be the beginning of the collapse of the Alliance army on Azeroth. Chapter 2066. In the Alliance command, almost every screen was playing a similar scene. Purple, red, blue, and green demons were rushing toward the Alliance army on the monitor screen. Or they were hitting sections of reinforced towering walls. Or they were catching up with the Alliance's tanks, trampling the Alliance's war machines and the soldiers inside into pieces. Or they were charging into the Alliance's foxholes, dragging the Alliance soldiers out of the infantry pits and tearing them to pieces. In the sea of ominous green evil light, the flags that symbolized the Pantheon and the Alliance were constantly being annihilated. Occasionally, they would reappear because of the arrival of reinforcements. Overall, the Alliance was collapsing on all fronts. Almost every battlefield was playing a similar battle. If the Alliance army had enough firepower, they could destroy the main force of the demons before the Burning Legion opened 100 medium-sized teleportation portals. Then the Alliance army would definitely win, and it would not be surprising if they could win without casualties. On the other hand, once the Alliance army arrived too late, then when the number of demons exceeded 100,000, the situation would become out of control. Often, it was necessary to mobilize 2 mobile fleets to support the demons in order to extinguish the ever-increasing demon army. Everyone knew that even if the humans fought against the demons, they would not be able to win even if the ratio of casualties was 1-to-1, or even 1-to-10. Billions of demons were twisting the void, waiting to kill. This number alone was enough to make the Alliance generals despair. What was more annoying was that this number could not be announced to the ordinary people and soldiers, otherwise, the morale might collapse before the war began. Although on every front, the Alliance army was still carrying out unyielding resistance, the earth-shaking battle cries mixed with the holy will of the Holy Knights seemed to converge into an invisible wall, blocking the Burning Legion's advance. But the situation was as the great leader of the Alliance Duque had predicted, the balance of victory on the battlefield was tilting, not to the side of Azeroth and the Pantheon. Instead, the situation was inevitably slipping into the worst possible situation. They were faced with an army of demons that could not be killed and could be resurrected again. No matter how powerful the defense line was, it would still gradually become precarious under this rogue offensive. The Tomb of Sargeras. Kill, Jaden roared arrogantly, mocking the Guardians and the Alliance army heroes. It's useless. Titan's lackey. Insignificant mortals. Your resistance is destined to become embellishments on the army's achievements. Your struggles will only become a topic of conversation after the battle. No matter what you do, what awaits you is only eternal despair. Hee hee. This golden sentence perfectly reflected the disdain of the owner of the laughter. William laughed heartily. If the Burning Legion is so confident, why are you panicking? Just be a good chess player and watch us, the chess pieces, struggle. Isn't that enough? Why lower yourself to fight with us? As a powerhouse from the Alliance who had followed Duque for the longest time, William's trust in Duque was akin to blind worship. He knew that he was here as a cover. Duque had even told him that he and the other heroes of the Alliance would be abandoned at the last moment. Even so, he was willing to accept it. William had asked Duque, "Is this for the victory of Azeroth?" "Yes. For the victory of Azeroth." After getting the answer he wanted, William quietly replied, "Very well. When that time comes, Anduin will be the king of Stormwind. If Stormwind is still around." They had seen through life and death, and abandoned all distracting thoughts. The heroes of the Alliance exerted 200% of their combat power. Their performance was even more eye-catching than the Titan Guardians. Jaden was infuriated by the fact that they knew they were likely to die but were still trying to bite the bullet. However, these guys in front of him were doing nothing but stalling for time in order to stall him, the commander of the army. It really drove him crazy. Odin, Tarim, Hodir, Freya, and Mimiron made up a total of 5 guardians, plus a group of wilderness demigods and Alliance heroes. If it wasn't for the fact that Jaden's strength had increased with Sargera's resurrection, and could even recover part of his vitality, he wouldn't have been able to withstand this combination at all. At this moment, all the powerhouses, no, all the intelligent creatures on Azeroth, regardless of whether they were demons from the Alliance army or the army, felt the birth of a variable. Clang! It was the sound of something breaking in their hearts. At this moment, everyone felt that the laws of this world were deviating in some way. Some evil power was leaving them in fear, as if something new and unknown was descending. This was a special power that came from within the planet. Its irresistible power was changing everything in this world. Karazhan. Standing on the highest level of Karazhan, in the eye of the magic formation that was the core of the weave, Khadgar's eyes suddenly widened. "It's here. I got the signal. Master has succeeded. All weave elemental messengers and weave soul mages, act according to plan." Weave, this was the communication system of the entire Alliance army. It carried the spellcasting needs of millions of mages. It was the core of the entire Azeroth Alliance army. This time, it displayed another effect, space blockade. On the planet, all the powerhouses felt their hearts skip a beat. A circle of ripples spread from the depths of the sea with the broken islands as the center and spread in all directions. At this moment, all the Eridar mages on the entire planet who were dealing with the teleportation gate had their connections with the Twisted Nether and Argus forcefully cut off. At the hundreds of landing points on the entire planet, every Void Lord widened their eyes in horror. From this moment onwards, all the magic communication channels were no longer receiving any response. It was as if the command center of the Burning Legion had been destroyed. "Impossible!" The lords cried out in shock. The Twisted Nether, Argus, and every teleportation point built for the convenience of the Burning Legion no longer sent demonic soldiers. This situation had never happened in the 25,000 years that the Burning Legion had roamed the universe. This situation was also noticed by the frontline commanders of the Alliance. Just as they were in shock, wondering if this was a trap set by the demons, a piece of exciting news came from the Alliance headquarters. Everyone in the Alliance. All the soldiers of the Alliance who are fighting on the front lines. The Alliance Throne Conference has now released a confirmed piece of news. The Alliance Commander Duke Marcus and Deputy Commander Sylvanas Windrunner have just destroyed the teleportation center on the Burning Legion's base, Argus. Chapter 2067. Commander Marcus is launching a fierce attack on the fallen Titan, Argus, who is guarding the planet. As long as we kill the Nirvanic, we can make the Burning Legion's most powerful Void Lords and Demon elites lose their ability to resurrect. A stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. All of a sudden, the tens of millions of soldiers in the Alliance all shouted together as if they were on steroids. Long live the Alliance! Long live Azeroth! Long live Commander Marcus! The soldiers shouted loudly, as if they wanted to turn every bit of air in their lungs into cries of resistance, pouring it out and roaring it out. While shouting, the soldiers on the front line poured firepower on the demons in a fanatical state. This news was too exciting. Before the arrival of the army, every person in Azeroth had been instilled with the dangers of the army by the Alliance's propaganda agency. There were videos of the destruction of Draenor as teaching materials, the words and deeds of the Draenei who had lost their homes, and the stories of the older generation who had been ravaged by the demon army led by Archimonde. While people were determined to fight, they couldn't help but feel worried, uneasy, and afraid. Especially when the army really launched an all-out attack, everyone stepped onto the battlefield with the determination to die. Wives sent their husbands off. Old people sent their sons off. Children sent their fathers off. Men were all on the battlefield, and there were women. Many towns had almost become empty cities, and the only ones left in the shelters were those who were too old to carry guns, women with big bellies, and children who were just learning to speak. In a situation where there was no way out, everyone was twisted into a rope. But when their last hope would turn into despair, no one could say for sure. Unexpectedly, in this moment of despair, it was the great hero Duke Marcus who had saved Azeroth time and time again who stood up. He used a strategy that transcended the mortal world to give the other party's teleportation hub a hard blow. This time, so what if the Burning Legion had billions of troops? If they were all stuck in the distorted void and couldn't come out, then they were just a string of meaningless numbers. If the only remaining leader of the Burning Legion, Kill, Jaden, had any mishaps, or if Sardra's resurrection failed, then it would be fun. Oh, 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 oh. The allied army soldiers shouted and launched a fierce counterattack, killing every demon's portal. To a rational commander, there was a possibility that the enemy's teleportation situation would change. They should seize the opportunity to completely destroy all the Burning Legion's teleportation portals in Azeroth. At the very least, they would be able to turn the tables on a strategic level. As for whether they could deal with Argus the Terminator, that was a matter for the Alliance heroes. Counterattack, counterattack. Fire all the cannonballs out for me. What was the logistics team doing? I need 100 units of ammunition to be sent to the front line as soon as possible. Marshal Bridget Abendis yelled without the slightest hint of ladylike demeanor. Whether it was Bridget, Tyler, Alfred, or Old Mograine, these frontline commanders all seized the opportunity. In Sardra's tomb, Kill, Jaden was furious. Impossible. That little bastard, Duque, he only controlled the teleportation hub of Argus' burning throne. How did he manage to close the warped nether portal? Tarim laughed and gave Kill, Jaden a thunderous hammer. As he smashed the egg, he revealed a very human-like smile. Guess. Guess. Guess my ass. Kill, Jaden's lungs were about to explode. In fact, not to mention Tarim, even the Alliance leaders didn't know how Duque managed to defeat Argus and even destroy the distorted void. It didn't matter if they didn't know. They were happy even if they were mischievous. In Sardra's tomb, without the endless support of the Void Lords, the allied army with more experts and more elite members suddenly fought with vigor. For example, Odin and Tarim weren't good at fighting protracted battles. The strategic needs forced them to take it easy and use their own strength. Once the portal was closed, they became the most dazzling stars on the battlefield without holding back. Kill him. Kill, Jaden cursed. Suddenly, two Void Lords rushed forward, trying to severely injure Odin, the most eyesore guardian. Not only because Odin was annoying, but also because almost all of Odin's attacks were of the holy attribute. Unfortunately, Odin wasn't a lone commander. He might not be able to command his former colleagues, but his lackeys were quite powerful. Heimdall, Odin's gatekeeper in the Valhalla, was also quite powerful as a watchman second only to the Guardians. With a bleeding sweep, he directly beat an Abyss Lord to the point of vomiting blood and retreating. Demon Wolf Fenrir pounced and bit a Dreadlord like lightning. No matter how that guy struggled, it moved its strong limbs and dragged that guy back to the allied army. Tortola the tortoise god was very eye-catching, pressing down with his light body that weighed over 1,000 tons. Pfft! Yes, the Dreadlord had become Dreadlord paste. Even dogs wouldn't eat that thing that affected the appearance of the city. Odin activated Radiant Storm, rolling up thousands of holy energy pulse beams. The golden light was like the rising sun. Any demon below the Lord level who touched it would become a corpse. There was no second outcome. Even Kill Jaden was at a disadvantage. This level of holy light was no different from strong acid to him. In an instant, a series of bucket-sized blisters appeared on his red skin. Ah! Against a demon commander as large as the egg, this attack was not light either. The number of demon lords around Kill Jaden who could help him quickly decreased. On the other side, in the burning throne on planet Argus, everyone received the latest news from the portal on Azeroth. Even the portal to the twisting nether had been sealed. Tyrant was curious. Duque, how did you do it? Argus and the portal to the twisting nether aren't from the same system, right? Duque smirked. Do you remember the one I used in the twisting nether? Tyrant was stunned and became embarrassed. Which one? Duque knew that Tyrant had misunderstood. He forced himself to be serious. 10,000 years ago, I used the recoil from the Well of Eternity to blow up the largest demon fortress in the twisting nether. This made Sargeras and Kill Jaden extremely sad, but it also led to the creation of a series of new measures. Jaina understood. For example, they transferred the soul cores of themselves and the strongest group of high-level Void Lords to Argus? Yes. To prevent their own portals from being used again, all the portals in the twisting nether are equipped with a countermeasure. That is, if they encounter a certain amount of reverse energy, the portal will automatically close. If the energy exceeds a predetermined threshold, the portal will self-destruct to ensure the safety of the twisting nether.